Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, partners, sponsors, and delegates, welcome to CPAC. This conference brings together leaders, innovators, decision-makers, and change-makers from around the world and across both public and private sectors to share ideas, inspire new thinking, and galvanize the right to help save Britain. Thank you for being part of this important gathering and the first ever CPAC Great Britain. Before we begin our program, if you could please join me in welcoming Judd Saul, founder of Persecuted.com, for our daily morning prayer.
Oh, good morning, everyone. You guys having a fun CPAC London? You know, I've been to many CPACs in the United States, and I gotta say, this is a great first step for CPAC London, and I believe there's gonna be many more to come. I was told last minute that they wanted me to give the opening prayer today. And I got on my knees and I prayed. I said, Lord, what message should I bring and what should we be praying for? And given the current circumstances that are here in England with the murder of Anne Widdecombe and the murder of Charlie Kirk in the United States, I feel it would be fit to pray for protection over our politicians and our upcoming leaders that want to fight for real change here in England, in America, and the West. So please, join me in prayer for protection over this land, over the West, and over our leaders. Heavenly Father, Lord, we come humbly before you today. We're asking for your guidance. We're asking for your wisdom as we move forward. Lord, there's a darkness that's spreading over this land, over England. It's spreading in America. It's spreading all over the world. Lord, we humbly beg and ask for protection over our leaders, over our up-and-coming leaders that haven't even been elected yet. Lord, may this nation turn back to you for guidance and real protection. May you grant everyone in this room that has influence to speak truth to power, and give them the courage to stand for righteousness. Lord, we give it all to you, and we owe it all to you. We love you, we honor you, and we put you first. Please, Lord, protect us. In Jesus' name, amen. I want to end real quick by sharing an interesting story. So I didn't quite realize this, but Ian Paisley, I met him yesterday, and very interesting thing happened was that his uncle Harold had moved to Canada and evidently made his way to the Midwest. I come from the state of Iowa, and I didn't quite realize this, but my grandfather had brought Ian to come preach in the state of Iowa and did gospel meetings all over our state. And my mother was led to Christ by Harold Paisley. And I got to meet the nephew of the man, there he is, that led my mom to Christ. England has a great tradition of amazing preachers that have spread the gospel throughout the entire world. And I believe it can get there again. It can get there again, and you guys can be the beacon of hope and Christianity across the world once again. So thank you for having me, and thank you, Ian, for your uncle, for making a big difference in my family's life and then in my life. Thank you. God bless.
And now, to start officially the third and final day of the world's first ever CPAC GB, please welcome to the stage former Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Liz Truss.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the third and final day of CPAC Great Britain. It's fantastic to have you all here this morning. We have an action-packed morning. We'll be hearing from Pauline Hanson, currently the favourite to become the next Prime Minister of Australia. We'll also be hearing from Bridget McKenzie, the leader of the National Party in the Australian Senate. We'll be hearing about the Anglosphere and what is going wrong in Australia, New Zealand, Britain, Canada, and America, and how can we fix it with people from those nations. And we're going to be hearing about the horror of the grooming gangs, directly from the victim who suffered. This is an appalling scandal in Britain where tens of thousands of girls were abused, raped, and tortured. And there has been a silence about it in the British mainstream media. Here at CPAC GB, we will be hearing the truth. We'll also be hearing the truth about COVID. We have Del Bigtree coming to speak to us, and a panel of doctors who will talk about what really happened during the COVID crisis and how we can prevent that from happening again. This is the final day of the first ever CPAC GB, but it will not be the final day of CPAC GB. We will be running this event again next year. Thank you. Thank you so much for all your fantastic support, and let's have a great day. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, from CPAC Australia, please welcome to the stage Andrew Cooper.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for making it back to CPAC once again. We stand here in London at a critical moment in time. The Western world is facing the same battles. Our nations are at a crossroad. We are fighting the same overreaching policies, dishonest governance, and cultural drift. But I can assure you, across the globe, the fight back has begun, and CPAC is a critical component of that. In Australia, we've held CPAC since 2019. For years, our audiences warned that they were tired of mainstream conservative politicians copying the policies of the left. Sounds familiar, right? Because establishment leaders refused to listen, CPAC bypassed many of them. Instead, we platformed politicians with true conviction. Leaders like Senator Jacinta Price, who successfully defeated the divisive race-based referendum with our chairman, Warren Mundine. Leaders like Senator Matt Canavan, a champion of energy security, coal-fired energy, what a champion. And Senator Bridget McKenzie, a conviction politician who you will hear from later today. Our mission is simple: to protect conservative principles and insist that our representatives actually stand up for what we believe in. Now, while CPAC's movement in Australia grew, we still needed a circuit breaker to force real change, and that breakthrough came from the strengths of one party and one conviction politician. a courageous leader. Her impact forced a return to conservative values across the entire conservative movement, the three political parties. In fact, change has been so rapid that for the first time ever, CPAC Australia has endorsed the three leaders of the three conservative parties. And they will all speak on our stage in October. The Liberal Party's Angus Taylor and the Nationals leader, Matt Canavan, are true conservatives and are proper representatives of their supporters. But we're not going to kid ourselves. This shift back to the centre-right only happened, in my opinion, because of one brave woman. For decades, she has defined political courage. The establishment has used every weapon to break her. She has been wrongfully jailed, attacked by the media, and targeted by the radical left. Yet she refused to back down or abandon the working class people that she represents. To borrow a famous phrase from this very city, from your country, this lady, she's not for turning. She is a warrior for freedom and a living testament to what it means to stay courageous under fire. Please welcome to the stage the founder of One Nation, possibly the saviour of our nation, Senator Pauline Hanson.
Hello and welcome. Thank you. Well, what a pleasure and an honour to be here. My first CPAC in Britain, and it's your first CPAC. We've had a couple in Australia, one in Sydney, one in Brisbane, and last year I attended the first time at Mar-a-Lago in Florida. You probably don't know me, but I know you. Because I see people like you that come to my meetings, who go to listen to what others have to say, people that are looking for change, for hope. Because we're all like-minded, we're concerned about our nations, our countries, where we're headed. And we keep asking questions. Why is it getting worse? Why aren't our politicians listening to us? Why do we see the decline of our nations? What hope is there for our youth? These are questions all the time being asked by my fellow Australians. I first got into politics, federal politics, in 1996 when I got first elected to the House of Representatives. And I was in there till 1998. I was a threat to the system. I was the not common politician. I was a person that spoke my mind and said what I believed. So the political force and the media had to get rid of me. So I lost that election in 1998. And due to my politics, I also faced a trial. A trial because I actually dared register a political party. And the charge was there were not 500 members of a political party, but 500 members of a sport movement. So I went through a trial of 6 weeks, a criminal charge. Now, originally it was a 6-month jail term or a fine. Prior to my trial, they changed that to 7 years retrospective. So I ended up getting charged, found guilty of the registration of a political party because they said they weren't 500 members' names of the political party, but the Pauline Hanson support movement. So I got 3 years on each charge, 3 charges, and I was to serve that in for 3 years, maximum security. I served 11 weeks before my whole sentence was quashed and overturned. My father said to me, he said, Pauline, politics is a dirty game. You will never change anything. And I said, Dad, you know what? It's because of people like you and your attitude, that's why nothing will ever change. I don't know if I'll ever be able to change anything, but I won't know unless I have a go. So I said, Dad, I'm going to have a go. And that was in 1996. I've been a thorn in the side of the establishment since. Fighting these politicians that half them wouldn't have a clue what they're doing, have never run a business, never employed anyone. And then you have the bureaucrats that come out of the universities and tell the politicians who are incompetent, don't even know what they're doing, and running the country. I've been a small businesswoman most of my life. And I've had my ups and downs in life like every one of you. So I'm here and I got back into politics. I got re-elected in 2016 and I'm now in the Senate. I formed my political party in 1997, One Nation, Pauline Hanson's One Nation. Probably, it's been a battle for me. I was out of politics for 18 years before I came back. And in that period of time, we now got 6 members in the federal parliament. We won 7 seats in the South Australian state election. I've got a member in South Australia and I've got a couple of members in the Western Australia. Our polls have increased, thank you. Because the Australian people are waking up. Finally, the light's been switched on. They're starting to realise we can't keep going down the same path that we're going. We can see what's happening to our country. And they keep asking themselves, if we can see it, why can't the politicians see it? And the greatest disaster that we've seen in Australia under this current Albanese Labor Greens government, because the Greens support them with the policy, with the legislation to get passed in the Senate. The whole issue that we have at the moment is mass migration. Under the current government, we've brought in 2 million people into the country. We can't cope with it. There's a lack of housing. We've got 150,000 people homeless, or people couch surfing, going from place to place. You've got families living in tents, people living in the cars. They have jobs, but they can't afford the rents. The rents are around about $650, $700 a week on average. And I was speaking to a couple of people in Sydney. They're paying $1,800 a week for accommodation in Sydney. You have the young ones now that feel they can never own their own home. The government keeps telling us we're building more houses. No, you're not. You're bringing in 2 million people in the last 4 years into the country. They're flooding our country with people that, you know, we don't know who they are. We brought in 3,000 people from Gaza. We're vetted in 24 hours. We don't even know who they are. We're bringing people in that have no intentions of assimilating. We see the change in our culture of what's happened to our nation. 30% of Australians are born overseas. 30%. I made a statement a couple of weeks ago and I said, I've always opposed, and I said it in my maiden speech in 1996, I opposed multiculturalism. I said we are multiracial, people from all different cultural backgrounds. But I also said we should be monocultural. I have been criticised by that, and they said, how dare I? I'm disenfranchising those people that come to Australia. I said, no. These people have chosen to come to Australia. Why? Because they wanted to be Australians. They wanted to join us. Do we want people to bring in their cultures that are incompatible with our culture and way of life? As I say to people, do I want Sharia law? No way in the wide world. Do I want child marriages? No. Do I want the burqa seen on our streets? No. Do I want child marriages? No, I don't. Australia has benefited from the different cultures and people have come to Australia. And they have embraced our country, the majority have. But we've foregone our own culture, who we are. And we are told that we must think of those that have come to our country before ourselves. We must forego our cultural identity and embrace those that have come to Australia. Fair enough. But it also has to work the other way around. Those that come to our country must embrace who we are, respect our country, respect our laws, and have, what can I say? I'm a patriotic Australian. And I just love my country, and I think that we need to stand up and fight for it. I came over here, and I've been quite outspoken against the migrants that we bring from these Islamic countries that are incompatible with our culture and way of life. I have spoken about it. I don't know if you remember that woman who dared to wear a burqa on the floor of Parliament. Well, you may not recognise me, maybe you recognise the legs, but it was me. I was criticised for doing that because it was a stunt. I'll tell you what happened. I actually introduced a private members' bill. Well, I attempted to introduce a private members' bill to ban full face coverings and the burqa. They wouldn't even let me introduce the bill. So I said, all right, okay. You don't want to ban the burqa? Well, I'll go and put it on. So I raced up to my office and I dragged it out of my cupboard because it wasn't the first time we wore it on the Parliament floor. So anyway, my staff was looking at me and they thought, what the hell's going on here? So I threw the burqa on and I raced out my door to go back down to the chamber. And one of my other members of Parliament was there on the phone. He said, he said, I've got to go. And he followed me down into the chamber. And so then the door was locked because the bells were ringing. A division was happening. Well, here I am in the chamber with the burqa on, and they're all freaking out. And then, so I sat down for the division, and they're saying, no, we can't do this. And of course, they're all carrying on. Of course, you can't unlock the doors and leave until the divisions happen. So they're stuck in there with me. They couldn't go anywhere. So then they had the big guns come in, the leader of the chamber. Then they had to get the president into the chamber to try and settle it down. And they wanted me to go, and I said, sorry, mate, I'm not going anywhere. So I sat there. So they had to shut down the chamber for 90 minutes to get me out. So it was the president came to see me and she said, I want from you that you won't wear the burqa again. And I said, what, for the rest of the day? She said, no, permanently. I said, I'm not going to tell you that. And I won't give them that word, my word on that. I think sometimes we have to stand our grounds on things that are very important to us. It didn't change. 24 countries around the world have banned the burqa. Some of these are Islamic countries. And we are so stupid that we don't see the impact it's having on our country. And places that we go to in Australia, you see the full burqa. I went to Tower Hamlet, that's right, thank you, Tower Hamlet, just last week. Well, wasn't that a rude awakening to me, for myself, to go there? I felt I was in another country. I didn't believe this was England. And then I went up to Luton with Tommy Robinson. You know, I'm getting the feedback in Australia from the media saying, how dare I associate with Tommy Robinson? How dare I speak to him? How dare I go up to Luton to see what's happening there? Every time I've spoken about the high immigration and Islam in Australia and Sharia law and the imams and those ones on our street spewing their hatred, radicalisation that's happening in our country. There's 18,000 people under surveillance in Australia, 18,000 people. Asia, who is equivalent to your M5 here, they've actually come out and said they can't guarantee we won't have another terrorist attack. We just had Bondi last December, 15 lives lost. That's what is happening in Australia. And because I dare speak up against it, because I came over here to see, and I keep referring back to England all the time in Australia. Do I want our country to become like England? No. Do I want it to become like France? No. Germany, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, you name it, these countries, Canada, America, and it's happening around the world. And until we stand up and speak against it and create debate, nothing will change. Our countries are worth fighting for, to defend, speak about it, call it out, because there'll come a time you'll never ever change it. It's not easy to stand up sometimes and speak out because people point the finger. Oh, she's a racist, she's Islamophobic, she's xenophobic. I've had it for years. But it's when you have the people that will speak up, who are in touch with you, your thoughts, your process, because you feel the same. But you keep shaking your head and say, why can't they see what I see? Why can't they see the differences that are happening to our country? Why do we not feel comfortable and safe in our own country? Why is this happening? Nothing will change unless we, the people, stand up and speak out against it and stop being in fear of because you might have the finger pointed to you or you might feel scared. My roots are with Britain. 3 of my grandparents came from England and 1 from Ireland. That's a touch of the Irish in me. But when I come back here, I brought my daughter here 3 years ago, and she actually, hadn't been here before. Get out of London, and what a beautiful country you have. London? No, thank you. That's my opinion. I'm sorry if I upset your feelings, but that's how I feel about it. And it's a shame. And I see this happening too in some parts of Australia. I love my country dearly. And that's why I've continued with it. Everything that's been thrown at me, everything that's been done, all the ridicule, the criticism, and the media will also say, oh, but she has no policies. She's just a protest party. Do you hear that here about Nigel Farage or Robert Lowe? They don't have answers for it. Well, I tell you what you've got now, is it working for you? Why do we get criticised? Because we challenge the establishment, because we've got different views and points of view, and we want to make change. I have got policies. For the Australian media that hear, my policies are cut back in immigration to 130,000 a year, bring in those people with those skills to benefit our country. Don't bring people in that all they want to do is get onto our welfare system and feed off the taxpayer. Bring in the right people who are proud to be there, who want to be Australians. And the other thing that is destroying our nation is net zero. Climate change. What an absolute scam that is, and what a hoax it is, that people are just paying for it. Feed off the taxpayers. We're making a lot of money out of this. It's about controlling the people. Here they say congestion tax. You know what they did? Cut down your roadway, put in bike lanes, caused congestion, and collected £100 million in a year from it, from you, the taxpayer. They create the problems and you pay for it. We've got 4,500 wind turbines in Australia. They're planning 31,000. Transmission lines all over our beautiful country. They talk about the environment. Yet they're quite prepared to destroy the environment to put up these wind turbines. They don't allow for coal mining in Australia. Well, we do, but they're trying to shut it down. To make one wind turbine is 260 tonnes of coal. To put it in the ground, that wind turbine will take 1,000 tonnes of concrete. then you can't do anything but bury it in the ground to get rid of it. How much environmental damage is that doing to our pristine forests they're destroying to put up these wind turbines? For what? And they only collect the power for 18 to 32% of the time. The rest of the time, 70% of our power comes from our coal-fired power stations. Oh, but we're shutting them down. We're smart over there. We actually only use 1%. Well, we export 7 times the amount of coal that we use for powering our own nation. We have the resources. We're one of the most resource-rich nations in the world. We have 25-30% of the world's uranium. Or don't use it for nuclear, but ship it out to other countries to use it. Don't use our coal, but ship it to China, whose emissions, and with India, around about 60% of emissions, and Australia's 1% of emissions. We've shut down our industries and manufacturing. They can't cope anymore. The cost of electricity, it's gone up 200 to 300% in the last 4 years. We've lost over 1,400 industries and manufacturing. We've shut down 50,000 small businesses in the last 4 years that have gone insolvent due to high electricity costs. Government regulations, red, green, blue and black. And you ask me what's blue? United Nations, the agreements and treaties that we've signed with them. What is black? The Aboriginal industry, that you've got to get their agreement to allow you for anything to happen. If when you want to start a new mine in Australia, it can take you anything up to 9 years, even more. If you want to start a development or business in Australia, you're basically looking sometimes here 4 years. It's this constant control, pressure, and being controlled by governments and these bureaucrats. This is where One Nation wants to get rid of the Climate Change Department. We want to go back to the basics, get rid of the rules and regulations. We want to create investment. You know, one of our biggest suppliers, or that we sell our gas and coal to, is Japan. Japan now is saying, you're too unpredictable for us. We don't want to know, we don't feel we can do business with you anymore. You're changing the goalposts all the time. Once we lose these countries that are buying our resources from us, your honeypot's gone. And we can't keep affording to pay the bills in Australia, especially ever-increasing welfare bills that is happening. More people on welfare. A lot of people who should be working can't be working. But then again, as I said, people. You know, we're a democracy. You can work if you want to work. That's your right. If you don't want to work, fine. But don't expect to put your hand in someone else's pocket to pay for it. A lot of people think they're right. No, it's not right. And then in Australia, we've gone completely woke, where at least you did something about it in the courts here, whereas here in Australia, you can't determine who's a male and female. You can't say that. We just had a case as this guy took Giggle versus Tickle in Australia, and the courts ruled in his favour. He was denied the right to get onto a platform, a female-only platform, and he was denied his rights because he claims he's a man. He's a woman. He looks, well, if it looks, walks and quacks like a duck, what is it? But even in Australia, you can actually change your birth certificate. So you can go and say, I'm no longer a female, I want to be a male, or vice versa. You can actually, at birth, you can determine what sex you want your child to be. This is how ridiculous we are. And you ask the Sex Discrimination Commissioner, oh, we have a board for this, right? You ask the Sex Discrimination Commissioner, what is a female? Can't answer the question. So what sort of job are they doing if they don't know the difference between sexes? There is only 2 sexes, male and female. That's it, biological sex. And children are going to school and saying, you can decide what you want to be, darling. You can be a male or female. And then we have men's getting involved in female sport. They're actually men. We have a big problem in Australia with this. And a lot of people, there's only a few of us politicians who dare speak out about this, and you're shut down otherwise. You got it right in Britain, and I'm glad you did. It's a pity we don't learn. We're too stupid over there with these feminist organisations or these other ones or the activists and pushing their own agenda, that common sense has been pushed to one side and we're worried about everyone's feelings where the majority of people know how, what is right, what is wrong. There's going to be so much psychological damage that's going to be done to our future generations of what we have done. Just to finish up, ladies and gentlemen, it's a lot of people over the years have just kept their head down and kept saying, well, what can I do? I can't do anything. You're wrong. Not everyone wants to be a politician, and I get it. But the whole fact is that it's your job now to get behind those people that you truly do believe and trust in them to be fighting for you on the floor of Parliament. That's where changes will happen, on the floor of Parliament. That's where you must get the right people elected. You can't keep going down the path that you have. I fear for England, I really do. And you were the crystal ball to me to come over here and see what's happened here. And I know I have been right from what I've seen. I believe that we're about 5 to 10 years behind England and where we are headed. And I'm not going to allow it to happen. I'm going to keep fighting this to get this young people. It's like I'm taking people and I'm shaking them, wake up. Stop burying your head in the sand anymore. Be accountable. One Nation has a very good opportunity at the next election to possibly be government or opposition or hold the balance of power. That's a huge responsibility. A responsibility I'm prepared to take on with those people beside me to work in the best interests of the people. I'm not there for the accolades or for the money or for my ego for any other reason than I chose to be a member of Parliament to represent the people to the best of my ability. I understand the responsibility that I've taken on. It's been making the right decisions without fear or favour. And until we stand up and fight for that, we're going to be in a hell of a place, and our children and grandchildren will never understand, what our history is about, where we've become. And do not apologise for being white. I'm sick of hearing about white privilege. We are all human beings. We must learn from the experience of the past by the mistakes that have happened. We don't repeat that in reverse now, and I see that happening. It has been my pleasure to address you today. Thank you very much. And to my fellow Australians here, good on, mate. Good on you, mate. See you back in Australia. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, our next panel addresses one of the most serious scandals in modern British history. To discuss the horror of the grooming gangs, please welcome to the stage our chair, Mercedes Schlapp, who's joined by survivor Ellie Reynolds, Penny Nance from Concerned Women for America, and Safeguard lead Claire Adams.
Good morning, CPAC Great Britain. How are we doing this morning? Are we awake? Did we get our coffee and tea? Okay, that's wonderful. Well, it has been a real joy to be with all of you, and I pray to God we come back next year. Do you think we need to come back next year for CPAC Great Britain? Let's save this great country with your help. I am honored to be with this incredible group of women. It is a very hard topic, a topic that you don't even want to talk about because you cannot believe that it is happening right before our eyes in our countries. And as we researched and talked to different individuals and learned about the atrocities of the grooming of these rape gangs that are happening here in the UK that was literally not even addressed for decades. And now we have some of these courageous women who are advocating for the victims and standing up for these girls that have suffered and been abused for so long. So I want to start with you, Ellie. You're a victim of this horrific, this grooming of these gangs. And your story is different than most, right? They literally come and say, oh, they were coming from broken families, these girls, they were being targeted. I mean, they've talked about over 250,000 girls in several decades that have gone through this process. Tell us your story.
I think this is the problem, though, when people talk about, I don't call them rape gangs because I think it really softens the blow of what torture we get put through. I call them rape gangs because that's exactly what they are. I think when people talk about rape gangs, they sit in, their first assumption is, very vulnerable, weak child, doesn't really know any different, comes from a care home, and I understand that in the majority of the cases, that is true. But there is different avenues to rape gangs and how they work. So, for example, I had a very, very good childhood. I was very, very fortunate. I had horses, I loved my education, and it was an off chance of a school relationship where my former partner's cousin was in a relationship with what turned out to be my main abuser. So it can literally happen anywhere, through any circumstance.
And tell us, Ellie, how did they approach you? How did they target you?
Well, I was at my partner's at the time quite a lot. They were pretty cool in the sense of they let me drink underage and they had a lot of parties, and my parents weren't really like that. So I spent a lot of time there. But it wasn't necessarily that my main abuser, would conversate. He'd give me looks that made me feel uncomfortable. But it was by off chance that I was going to give my friend a cigarette and I was put in the footwell of a car and I was missing for 4 days after that. And I was found in a takeaway.
How did your parents, during those 4 days, it must have been horrifying.
Well, my abuse went on from 2013 until 2018. My mum and dad, they used to try and get me to talk and tell them what was going on, but you have to understand that when you're a victim of rape gangs, you suffer with serious consequences and you know the threats that they give you. And I just wasn't willing to put my family through that. So I always stayed quite quiet about what was going on. I was quite angry and I released my emotions in different ways. But I never told them. It was actually the police that knocked on to my parents' house and told them that I was being raped.
How old were you?
So I was 13 until 17, 2013 until 2018.
Think about that. Think about your daughters. Think about your nieces. Think about your grandchildren. From 13 years old to 17 years old. Taken away their innocence. It's unfathomable. Penny's a very dear friend of ours, runs a very important women's group in America, Concerned Women of America. And I got to ask you here because in the US, we see this grooming happening, these rapes happening. This has been a huge issue that actually President Donald Trump has addressed and has tackled, has really taken directive action to find many of these missing children who have been part of these sex trafficking rings. In the case of America, coming from the border. Tell us your comparison, what you see, what we've done right in America, what we need to improve, and what advice you can give here in Great Britain.
Well, greetings from Concerned Women for America, members in the United States, and I just want to thank you for allowing me to be here and also for being willing to talk about this hard topic. And the fact that you're not willing to avert your eyes from something that's very dark means there's hope, means there's a chance to do something different. And, you know, the scourge of rape and criminal activity isn't just for one country, it's all over the world. And so Concerned Women for America has worked on the issue of sexual exploitation now for many years. We started in 1979, and we've seen different iterations of it. You know, you talked about President Trump. We've seen the crime numbers, just overall crime numbers, including rape, go down in the United States to the levels we haven't seen since 1900. Think about that. Since 1900. Well, why is that? It comes from the top. It comes from the leaders at the top saying, we will not allow this. You know, I worked when I was younger with an organization called Prison Fellowship, and I understood more crime issues. And one of the things I learned that only 2% of the population create crime or predators against the rest of us. And that number is pretty solid across humanity. And if you go after that 2%, you either imprison them or deport them. Shocker, crime goes down in your country, crime goes down in your cities. And the fact that President Trump has said, absolutely not, we're not allowing these repeat offenders to continue to do horrific things against people in their host country, we've got to stop it. We're seeing numbers go down. And so it really comes down to whether over 30 years' time in Great Britain, the leaders were not interested in taking on an issue that made them feel uncomfortable. What if in the US, Mercy, in the 1930s, we said we can't come after the mafia because they're Italian? Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. In the United States, in front of the Supreme Court, is a statue of Lady Justice. She's wearing a blindfold, and she's holding a scale. What is it saying? Justice must be blind. Must be blind. You don't get a free pass because of your community or anything about you. Because when you do this, other people are hurt. You cannot give a pass. So finally I'll say, Micah 6:8. What are you to do, O man? To do justice and love mercy. If you don't do justice, you can't love mercy.
And you know, Penny, I think one of the things that we've also talked about is, and we're seeing here in Great Britain, is that they've downgraded. So like if you're a 13-year-old to a 15-year-old, they downgrade like the rape, you know, conviction to something much lower because, you know, they're 13, 15-year-old and they could be in love with this older individual.
40-year-old,
yes.
50-year-old.
That is something that happens in states like California. Yeah. Talk to us about that.
Yes. So there is an issue with, and I feel like it's gotten worse in some ways and better than others. You know, initially when we started talking about sex trafficking, we realized that law enforcement just thought they were prostitutes. Like they're prostitutes. And somehow they didn't matter because they were prostitutes. Like, wake up, people. 11-year-old, 12-year-old, they cannot consent. Under the law, they are not capable. No little girl wakes up in the morning and says, I think I'll grow up to be a prostitute. No one wants that. And so as we have re-educated law enforcement in the United States, we have seen better outcomes. But you're right, the blue states that have the more lascivious view, frankly, of sexuality, I think it spills over into their view of crime, and they don't take it as seriously. One last thing, you mentioned the border. 300,000 children were trafficked across the border and went missing under the Biden administration. The Trump administration has gone looking for those children. We found about 150,000. We got 150,000 to go. We cannot leave one child behind, not one.
Claire, there's this guy. His name is Shabia Ahmed. He was convicted for 30 sexual offenses against children as young as the age of 12, drugging these children, grooming these children. These children were raped. He was sentenced to 22 years, has just been released after 14 years. I don't know about you, but I think they should castrate the guy. They should castrate these sexual predators who go after these innocent children. What is happening here in Great Britain? Why are they releasing these sick, twisted, demonic individuals back into society?
Well, the majority of the time it's the political will. They're using the excuses that the prisons is full. They're forgetting to realize that 13,000, 10,000 of the spaces in the prisons are full of illegal migrants. So there's 10,000 for starters. Now, what they're doing is they brought in an early release scheme. And they cherry-picked who they actually wanted to release into society. And paedophiles, grooming gang perpetrators, and rapists were put on that list. Now, we thought originally it was a decision made out of love and out of spacing. We then since find out that the ex-safeguarding minister, Jess Phillips, she knew this was going to happen. And her voice was, we will do risk assessments. Risk assessments on men who raped, tortured, and trafficked children as young as 11 years old. And she thought we could get a risk assessment and they would behave. A rapist will always be a rapist. A paedophile will always be a paedophile. I personally don't believe in the rehabilitation of a paedophile or a rapist. That is my personal opinion, and I'm standing by it. I have been lobbying, advocating, working with children of victims of grooming gangs and serial paedophiles and rapists for quite a long period of time now. And what I see is the lack of political will. However, we have seen parties like the Reform Party, like the Conservatives, who are fighting for children in this country right now. And there are people pushing back because they do not have the political will for our children.
Claire, tell us why you got involved.
So it's a really strange one, actually. My family member is a victim, but not of grooming gangs. I was helping out ladies, and I noticed that why did my family members, serial rapist, spend 24 years in prison, and then all of a sudden I need to stand up and make sure he stays in? And they kept him in. Then they released him. 3 months later, he reoffended. 3 months later, another child has been hurt, and I fought like mad. And I thought, that's it. I've had enough. I'm going to do everything in my power to speak to political parties, to stand on stages like this, to let people know what is happening in this country to our children, our future. So that is why I'm here. I just wanted to finish off. Last week, I went to my local council meeting, and we passed, the councillors passed, a motion so that my local area could be considered into the National Grooming Gang Inquiry. And that was by the Reform Party. And it took us years to get anyone to recognise what is going on in this country.
I'm gonna share with you something that's really shocking as well. We at CPAC, we're actually hosting our 4th annual International Summit Combating Human Trafficking in Washington, D.C. next week. Literally coming from CPAC Great Britain, heading to D.C., where we will be gathering with many international leaders on this topic, on specifically human trafficking, which involves grooming gangs, rape gangs, all of this. It's all very intertwined. And one of the dynamics I found and Penny can attest to this, is that we believe at CPAC that this is a humanitarian issue. This is not a Democrat or Republican issue in the United States. When we have reached out to Democrats, we get little to no support on legislation to stop this. And that is, to me, horrible. So it is the Republicans, like you mentioned, Claire, the Reform Party, the conservatives, who have said, we must protect our children. That should be a priority for every society. And so I go to you, Ellie, because you want to make sure there's no more girls that have to go through this. What has to be done?
Absolutely. I mean, my case being reopened again, it doesn't faze me. The first thing that the police officer said to me when he reopened my case almost probably over 6 months ago now was, now your case is reopened, please don't talk about it in the public, because he knew fine well what I did. Well, I've got a message for that police officer. I would sacrifice my justice in a court of law to make sure that no other child in our country has to go through this, because my justice is our children being safe. Now, what we have to do, so I work very closely with Nigel Farage. I've done a few press conferences with him. I probably do his heading most of the time, but Nigel genuinely cares. And I have been around a lot of politicians begging for them to listen. And I can't tell you one politician that's listened apart from Nigel. Nigel offered to turn Parliament into a court. It was denied. The problem that we have right now in this country is a Labour government. Everybody can agree with that.
Why do you think, I mean, I was reading the statistics, you're talking about 20 years of just ignoring, more than 20 years of just ignoring these cases, of the police just putting it aside. Do you think they were involved? Who's been involved in this scheme?
I know for a fact that all services, all authorities are involved. Social workers, police officers, and I just want to make it very clear.
Social workers.
Social workers, yeah. I mean, look at Shabir Ahmed that's due now. Well, he's released, isn't he? Well, he had access to vulnerable children. He was working for the council. He had access to our weakest children, and he took that for granted. And what did they do? They looked the other way. It's all up and down the country, no matter where you go, you will find that social workers knew about it, police officers knew about it, and I want to make it very clear that it doesn't just stop at the age of 12. One of my abusers is serving a life sentence right now, and the person was 7. That's in the public domain. It goes a lot younger than you think.
And Penny, to Ellie's point, I mean, I think the average child who's being sex trafficked in the United States is 11 years old. Biggest consumers of kind of this human trafficking content on social media of children being raped are Americans. I mean, this is...
And also, we're the biggest purchaser of child abuse content in the world, which is so heartbreaking and disgusting to me as an American. But it won't stop until we're serious, until every single person is willing. You know, one thing, this is a little afield, but I think you'll understand, Mercy. When you believe in the unique dignity of every human life, when you believe that every child is sacred, then it spills over to everything you believe, right? And if you think that children are trash or in the way or not important, then I think you behave in various and sundry other ways. And so I believe as people of honor, we have no choice but to look at into the eyes of these little ones. National Center for Missing and Exploited Children in the United States teamed up with a baroness here, forgive me, I don't remember her name, who started really talking about this issue earlier on in the 90s. And they found babies. And I won't put in your mind some of the things I had to learn about. But children, they're so young that they had to remove a diaper for abuse. That's the sickening world of this world. And you can sell a drug one time, but you can sell a human being over and over and over again. And that is the evil that is this way. It's all about money.
It's all about money, and it's just pure demonic. I just think it is as demonic as it can get when you're targeting these innocent children. You know, I think, Claire, you mentioned, you know, we've talked about this about, as Ellie did, about the social services being involved, the police being involved. What did it take for this finally to, you know, blow up in the faces of all these politicians? And why does the left, why do they not want to engage and stop this type of abuse?
I'm not going to take it away from victims and survivors because they've been screaming and shouting at anyone who'd listen for many, many years. And there's many advocates out there, women who worked in sexual health clinics, journalists and politicians such as Anne Cryer and Sarah Champion who lost their jobs for speaking up. In terms of, I think it was Elon Musk on the 1st of January 2025 when he tweeted and it just blew up again. Yes. We've got many advocates, a gentleman called Raj and Mia, there's myself, there's many, Sammy Woodhouse. I could keep going on and on and on, Ellie as well. I think when it comes to the left, I have a theory, you'll have to excuse me on this one, but I tend to find that they will minimize anything to further their own cause. And if that means covering up children being raped, they will do that. Essentially, we are not worthy. We're just working class girls. And I'll give you an example. That we were called, or the girls were called, things like child prostitutes. They were classed as replaceable. There's been many occasions when it would curl your toes if I were to explain from transcripts and the thousands of transcripts that I've read over the time of the things, the evil that has happened to our children in this country, and the fact that the left looked away and they simply just don't have the political will.
I think as well, though, just to add on to your degrading comments that we suffer, a lot of the comments that I received by my abusers, 99% of the time had white in front of it. So it was my skin colour. It was nothing. I didn't do anything wrong. I was a child. It was white trash, white slag, like you say, a child prostitute, and it's terrible. And I also think it blew up as well, going back on your point, with the inquiry. So there was a few girls that had left the inquiry because we were told, I was one of them, we were told when we stepped onto the victims panel that we were not allowed to mention the ethnicity of our abusers. It was uncomfortable. Now, I've done a lot of pieces on that, and then the woman that was running, now it was the Home Office and it was NWG Network, and Saba Kaiser, that was actually running the victims panel, was doing an article saying how the victims, talking about the ethnicity of a Muslim man abusing them, is hateful and divisive, and you can still find that article online.
Oh my gosh. And then you talk about in terms of these radical Muslims who encourage these quote unquote marriages as young as 13 years old for these girls. It's horrific. But Ellie, I want to ask you, I think one of the components is you want to be tough on the criminal, go after the pedophile, the sex predator, the sex trafficker. But there are the victims, as you mentioned, Claire. How have you healed?
I haven't. I think that's always a tough question because everybody sees me for, what I'm doing now and coming across as quite powerful and talking to you all about it, but nobody sees the days when you are drained, when you don't want to talk to anybody, your battery's completely died. I don't feel like you ever fully heal. It's just that I found my justice not in a courtroom, not with my abusers behind a dock. I found it by getting safety for other girls and boys out there, and I'll continue to do that for the rest of my life.
Penny, so it's we were talking about the left and something popped in my brain about the puberty blockers, because I think the left, really, there's no moral compass because they're willing to pump a kid with puberty blockers at the age of 9, 10, 11, 12. I mean, is that part of it as well?
Well, I think it's also identity politics, right? That this need to feel morally superior and being and tarring anyone that disagrees with you with the term racist, right? I mean, they've overused that so much that it doesn't even have meaning anymore. There are real racists out there, but if the term racist is applied to anyone who disagrees with you politically, then it means literally nothing. And so,
Definitely.
And so it doesn't even stick anymore, right? And so, yes, I mean, again, it's sort of that, the idea that children are, they're whatever we say they are or whatever even they say they are. And you know, you have that sort of right to determination. And there are people who think that an underage child should be able to consent to underage sex, that a 11-year-old can be in a relationship with a 40-year-old or a 6-year-old. I mean, that is a real thing that is being argued within sort of the mental health community. Minor attracted person sounds so much nicer than pedophile. And so they're reclaiming this name instead of saying, you are a criminal and you must go to prison. And by the way, we can set aside whether that a person can, you know, I'm a Christian. I think that you can come to Christ and he can heal many, many things. But if you have hurt another person, all that can happen in prison. You know, you can become a Christian and you be rehabilitated in prison and do work in prison. You just shouldn't get out. And it is the worst. That I will tell you, over years of study, I know that sexual predators are the most difficult to rehabilitate. That number is very, very low.
Claire, this man that should be castrated should be a Hakman. Pakistan doesn't want him. In fact, they said he's been spoiled by Britain. The British government, they're trying to close a loophole so they can deport the guy. I mean, how many of these guys do we have to deport? How many of these yeah.
I couldn't put a number on it. I seriously couldn't put a number on how many. We did have an inquiry down in Rotherham, and it said there was about 1,400 victims, not perpetrators.
Wait, 1,400
in one tiny town.
1,400 victims.
Victims.
Wow.
With how many perpetrators? Times that by 84, 85 that we know of, and then the ones that haven't been reported either. I could not put, but I will tell you this. Every week, up and down this country, there are grooming gang perpetrators being sent to prison, including one last week. It's continuous.
What laws need to be changed? What has to be done?
Personally,
yeah.
if I was allowed to say that, I would give the death penalty to a paedophile. Personally.
So when we started the CPAC Center for Combating Human Trafficking, now in its 4th year, we've had a lot, thank God, a lot of successes from a legislative standpoint to help victims of human trafficking. And one of my favorite moments is while I was at work, CPAC had sent a request over to the president to pardon a human trafficking victim, someone who was actually put in jail, actually convicted as a felon because her human trafficker basically threatened her, pressured her, used her accounts for money laundering, and then she was caught up in this crime. And she's an advocate for human trafficking, Holly Nadel. So we put in that request, and I got a call from President Trump. I was filming one of the shows I do, and I keep getting this call from the White House, and I don't pick up. And finally I pick up, and they're like, the president needs to talk to you. I'm like, well, I'm kind of taping this show. And I was like, what am I saying? I'm like, yes, please put him through. So I'm telling the producers, I'm like, stop taping right now. And he gets on the phone, and this shows you the character of President Trump, where he said, this Holly Nadel, Mercedes, you know her? I was like, yes, sir. She was a human trafficked victim. Explain the situation. He goes, well, because you're asking for this pardon, I will grant the pardon for Holly Nadel. And I will say I was so humbled and honored that we can be part of really having this wonderful advocate for victims have a second chance in her life and start her life again. And we are so grateful for President Trump for doing that. And our goal is to continue to help get these pardons for these human trafficking victims who are caught up in these horrific situations. But I want to wrap this up with, what's your message to our audience here? What do they need to do? What is their call to action that they need to do to get this message out, to stop this insanity in this country?
My message would be start getting comfortable with having uncomfortable conversations. You have to keep the pressure on, because the minute the pressure drops is the minute it's going to go back away, and we cannot afford that as a country right now. Keep the pressure on, keep talking about it, and keep listening to the girls, because we've had many, many years of not feeling like we can lean on anybody. And I'm telling you from personal experience, you've no idea how much I've leaned on the public in my journey of speaking public about my experience. And it's been amazing. So please keep in support, keep talking about it, and, you know, really be prepared to get uncomfortable, because it's going to need to be done.
Penny.
Well, I wanted to say the same thing, and good for you that you're here this morning, but you've got to carry this message to others, because you don't know how many people, you know, our women, our ladies in the U.S. tend to be church ladies, and they're very comfortable in their pews. But you need to know, in order to do justice and mercy, you have to know. And so we deputize all of you to go forward and share the message, share Ellie's story, and to move forward in this country.
Claire.
So the government's first choice is to look after their country, is the security of the country. Parents is the security and safety of their children. All the children in this country are our children, and we must safeguard them, look out for these people, speak to your children, have these uncomfortable conversations around men, and safeguard our future. They are our future. Thank you.
I really want to thank this incredible panel. You inspire us, really. You inspire us with your stories. You inspire us with your fight. You inspire us with your willingness to go public on all of this. And know that you have allies who stand with you as well. God's children are not for sale. And we have to never forget that. Thank you all, and God bless.
Ladies and gentlemen, 6 years ago, governments around the world locked citizens in their own homes on the pretext of science. In the years since, many have realized that lots of that science was a lie. To tell the truth about COVID, please welcome to the stage our chair, CEO of Informed Consent Action Network and host of The High Wire, Del Bigtree, joined by Dr. Vibeke Manica, Dr. Lassio Boros, Dr. Maria Hubmer-Mogg, and Alan Miller, founder of the Together Foundation.
Well, thank you everybody for being here this morning. I want to thank CPAC for hosting this very important conversation. A little bit of my background: I was Director of Communications for Robert Kennedy Jr. when he ran for president. And I like to say Robert Kennedy Jr. would not be HHS Secretary in America for 50 more years had COVID not happened, and woke so many minds up to the fact that health is being used as a weapon against freedom around the world. So just very quickly, how many felt like the government, wherever you're from, overstepped in locking us down, taking education away, ability to visit our loved ones in the hospital? Right. And so when we think about freedom, what other thing has ever happened in the world where every single nation worked in lockstep against its own citizens and took away their rights? Didn't matter whether you were a communist nation, authoritarian, a democracy, it did not matter. There was one thing that was able to sweep across the world and rob us of freedom. I think we all want to move on from it, right? We want to put COVID in our rearview mirror and say, all right, we're past that. I think partly because we all felt guilty that we went along with it. On some level, we allowed it to happen, and to face it is to face a weakness that we all were a part of worldwide. But some of the people I have on this panel today are those that really did stand up during COVID. So to begin with, in this conversation, I'm going to start with Vibeke Manica. You were, a data analyst. You're a science expert in health policy up in Denmark. And so what happened? The moment COVID came out, you got very vocal. What was it that you were trying to let the people know based on your perspective looking at the data?
Well, I'm a Danish doctor, PhD. I've been looking at data my whole career as a doctor. And I know data, and I know the Danish numbers. And I could see when the Danish Prime Minister published that she would lock down the country, as you did in the States, I could see from the number, this is nonsense. I mean, this is horrendous. And I actually said that to my husband, who's also a doctor, I said, this will cost lives, because people would stay away from the hospitals. They would not go to the emergency unit and that. And I was wrong. I said we will have excess mortality within 1.5 years. I was wrong. It was 1 year and 3 months. And then we had excess mortality in Denmark for 2 years running.
So you're saying, I mean, what's amazing about that is the excess mortality isn't the year we have COVID in 2020.
No.
2021, where we now have the solution, a vaccine, is where you start seeing a rise in all-cause mortality.
We saw it actually, and you're correct, because in Denmark we hardly had anyone dying from COVID. We have people dying with COVID and for many odd reasons, but we didn't have like excess mortality in 2020. But May 21, it all started. And it was not only in Denmark, it was in many European highly vaccinated countries that excess mortality came. And that was because of, and that was because the lack of diagnosis, the lack of treatment. And I keep saying when people are saying, oh, could that be? I say, well, if it doesn't matter that patients go to hospitals, why have the hospitals? So it's like they had.
What happened when you spoke out against the lockdowns and this? What we all experience around the world. But as an expert, obviously, you worked with the health departments before. Yeah. I mean, you are a well-known scientist in your community. Yeah. Were you treated with respect? And thank you very much for your knowledge and taking a close look at our numbers.
I mean, I wish I could say yes, Del, but it's a big no. I'm a public figure and has been that almost all my career. And literally the day as I spoke against the lockdowns, I was censored, I was harassed, I was defamated. They tried to get my authorization, which they didn't manage to, and I still am. We have been doing very, I think, important scientific work on batch dependency, on side effects, and there's totally silence in Denmark. They won't even mention the data, they won't even mention it. I think they're frightened. But for me as as a citizen, I'm so upset because I'm thinking, if that is how they censor me, and I know a lot about the data and the COVID data and all the horrendous what happened. So what's happening with the, anything else, the environment discussion, anything else. Yeah. So if that is how they treat experts, which I see myself as, then that could be in any field. And there you go for the free speech. We don't have that.
It's really important if you think about that. And I've been traveling the world. The best and brightest experts and scientists all reacted the same way. This virus is not as dangerous as we think. There's treatments that we can use to treat this from the very get-go. And those people were censored and oftentimes lost their jobs. Maria, you were a doctor in Austria. As I travel around, many, many doctors in almost every country said hydroxychloroquine was known to be a solution for SARS during the SARS-CoV. So that had come from Didier Raoult in France, had done huge studies on that. So they all said, well, let's try that. Let's also use steroids because this is an inflammatory event. And everywhere I go in the world, the experts, just, like yourselves, would say to the health department, look, we've got to cure. This is working. I'm having 100% or nearly 100% success at saving my patients. The health departments immediately said, and this is in Japan, this is in Germany, this is in Poland, this is in Italy, this is in America. Everywhere I go, the health department said, cease and desist. Stop using those products immediately. And they said, what do you need from me? You know, it's Bob, it's Joe, I know you, I've worked for the health department. You know, I'm telling you, we have a solution. Do you need a double-blind study? They said, if you do a study, we will take your license. Was that your experience as a medical professional on the front line? And where is that coming from?
Yeah, so actually that's a common thing around the world. And I remember clearly December 2020 when Dr. Pierre Corey was testifying about ivermectin, and a bunch of doctors got into that. And we figured, okay, this really works, right? And then, of course, the McCullough protocol came out, and we looked at that. And Sef Zelenko, we should not forget to mention
Zelenko
Dr. Sef
amazing.
Zelenko. May he rest in peace, and all that. So we knew it worked, and my colleagues and I early on dropped out of the medical board because they were sending us letters, they were suing us, and the day they announced the mandatory vaccination, which we had in place in Austria, of all places in Austria, I said, I want to step down from the medical board. I'm not going to work for a corrupt medical board as this, and from that day onwards, I couldn't work as a doctor anymore.
Where is it coming from? Like I still, when I say I'm on an investigation of who is they? Who is the they that are doing this? Why are doctors not being allowed to practice medicine, which is to use whatever tool you think works for you? Don't I, as a patient, have the right to look at doctors saying, this person's having this success rate, I'm gonna go to who's having the most success? When did medicine become this top-down bureaucracy that decides what's working versus the doctor being, and especially at a time where they had no cure, they had no answers? Why were they stopping doctors that were claiming to have results and having answers?
So there definitely is a head of the snake for sure. But before I go into this, we have to understand that if ivermectin, for example, would have been officially approved as a COVID-19 therapeutic, then we would have never had an emergency use authorization approved by the European Medicine Agency. And that is a big thing. And I also wanted to say thank you to Herbert Kickl, who is the leader of the Austrian Freedom Party. And he was the leader of the opposition party, FPÖ, and he did a press conference on ivermectin. And my God, did they ridiculed Herbert Kickl on the news everywhere. So that's the thing. So we know that ivermectin worked. He was doing his best so that we can use it officially.
Just so you know, I mean, just to jump, like there's now been studies, studies all around the world about 80% effective, especially with early treatment at stopping death from COVID. So in America, I think about 1.5 million deaths. We can cut that by 80%. When our government stopped access to ivermectin, to these products, essentially millions were murdered, I would say, worldwide by that issue. But just very quickly, because I want to move on, who is controlling the decisions in European medicine?
So people don't know and understand that the European Medicine Agency is actually funded by the pharmaceutical companies whose products
how much funding? Like what percentage?
It has to approve. I brought the numbers. So in 2025, the EMA had a budget of 510 million euros, and 90% of that money stemmed from pharmaceutical companies. Only 10% from the EU budget. Hereby, there was also by the EU formed the HERA, which is the Health Emergency Preparedness and Response Agency. And this agency gets 30 billion euros per year, and it doesn't have to show proof where the money goes actually. And so the EU has 30 billion for the HERA, but they tell us that they don't have 510 millions to have an independent European Medicine Agency. So that's a problem, and we informed a couple of members of European Parliament, such as Christine Anderson, about that, and I hope our allies in the EU Parliament are working on that.
Alan Miller, you you're not coming from a scientific background. You're a businessman. You are in communications. You started Togetherness Declaration, or Together Declaration, #Together, which was instrumental in moving people to recognize their own voice in this. What motivated you? How'd you get started, and what was Together all about?
Well, basically, initially, I came from hospitality, and we had a campaign with a few thousand operators saying we refuse to have a Papers, Please society. We had Freedom Day, and Boris Johnson saying now we're going to have vaccine passports. And we thought this is an egregious imposition alongside lockdowns, which had never been done before. That was the really unprecedented thing. A tiny trial once in Mexico. Across the world, we're having lockdowns where many people were already discussing cost-benefit analysis. Maybe we could shield some of the very old, but we should keep the economy going. And in addition to that, we were infuriated that we lost 45,000 care workers through a mandatory jab imposition, which, when we know how serious our social health care situation is, as well as informed consent.
Can I just say right there, we're talking a year into this, these doctors have been standing on the front lines. Odds are they've already caught COVID. They have immunity. They have risked their lives for us to stand on the front line, and now we're taking their jobs away because they won't take a vaccine when they already have immunity. I mean, we're talking about a level of insanity here. It's just compliance for the sake of compliance.
And so then they threatened the NHS workers, and we worked with 100,000 very brave frontline staff who said, we've been working for a year, we're not willing or prepared or want to take this procedure. And so we did a very big campaign with NHS 100,000K and many other campaigners to say this is outrageous and we're not going to have it. And we got several 100,000 signatures. We went to Downing Street, we had protests, we lobbied around the country, we got emails and letters to MPs. We went to NHS trusts. We leafleted and flyed up and down the country and said, informed consent is too much of an important principle, and the idea that you can just dispense with it. So in the end, both those things were stood down. Our friends in Canada and Australia, when we were talking to them, they said, well, good luck, but we don't think you're going to win that. And actually, when that stopped, everything stopped.
You proved the voice of the people was even bigger than really government power in the situation.
Well, I hope that's the case. I think that what happened was they realized that it was such a fight, and also they couldn't. There's 100,000 brilliant frontline staff here, right? And they were very brave, and we got them onto the mainstream media. This is the thing, we broke the back on it, because up until then, all the censorship and shadow banning, but we managed to work really hard to get them on through social media and then onto big broadcasters in morning TV and was saying, look, I'm a nurse, I'm a doctor, I've been doing these various things, and this is ridiculous. And it was a hearts and minds campaign. And I think that, alongside the public, which we're passionate about holding everyone's feet to the fire and saying this is unacceptable. And I just want to say that in terms of the continuation of these trends, we see a lot of them now around the so-called emergency that carries on with the climate, and you must do this and you must behave, and around censorship, and now with digital ID. The attempt to impose, we've seen the Digital Services Act in Europe. In Britain, they're trying to impose digital ID across the board, 8 million directors, and with a social media ban, it will be a de facto a digital ID. So across the line, even though we had an impact, it's continuing. And even though it doesn't take the form right now of this health emergency, they use the idea of an emergency and a crisis, or we've got to deal with it, to keep imposing these things. So we've got to be vigilant and we've got to be robust.
I agree. How many people in the audience right now believe you know someone that died from the COVID vaccine? How many people know someone's been injured by the COVID vaccine? Okay, Dr. Laszlo Boros, you're a a biologist, right?
I'm a medical biochemist.
Medical biochemist, pediatrics as an expertise. You've looked at this mRNA technology. So despite whether the COVID virus, what it did, how dangerous it was, what is your opinion about the safety of the COVID vaccine that was injected into the entire world?
So my background is medical biochemistry and looking at metabolism, including RNA, among many other things. And we use isotopes to label deuterium, carbons, so we know how fast it takes for RNA to break down in cells, and this is a very important biological safety information for us. Now, in my 25 years of working on RNA, as well as other metabolites, what we learned is that if you want to do anything with RNA, you shouldn't modify it, you shouldn't stabilize it.
You should not.
You should not
Okay.
modify it, you should not stabilize it, and you shouldn't inject it. So they did all of that. Now, when they came out with this RNA idea, I was kind of laughing, and with my Hungarian doctor colleagues, we published papers afterwards. We kind of laughed at it because RNA is just has like a half-life of what, 2 hours in our body if it's not modified, not stabilized. So we figured this is not going to work because this is why everybody abandoned the field of mRNA after Malone's first paper in PNAS, and Karikó, who got the Nobel Prize for it, actually we grew up 12 miles from each other in Hungary, they actually abandoned the field because RNA, unless you modify it, you stabilize it, it's actually useless for anything. Now,
That's exactly what they did. They brought in pseudouridine. They took something that is supposed to leave the body quickly and made it persist. Why is that a problem?
It's a huge problem because RNA, you should look at it as the blueprint of your house. This is how your cells are translating into proteins, and those actually do the work. So if you kind of your blueprint is modified in the middle of the construction pattern, just give you an example, then it's going to be a disaster because frame shifting, meaning that the house is not built where it should be, meaning it's not the same protein as you designed. Fragments can be formed, and this is the majority of spike proteins after modification of its RNA and injections. And the biggest danger is because the template stays in the cell is reverse transcription, making DNA from RNA, and that's the source of aneuploidy, which we all know, physicians, it's more DNA in the cells that is necessary, and that's a cancerous, a transformed cell.
So you think this could end up causing cancer? We're hearing turbo cancers, autoimmune disease issues.
It has a huge impact on
and you think spike protein?
Well, I don't just think, I know that, in fact, we publish papers about this. So just sum it up, if you ask me as a medical biochemist, it's beyond a disaster what they did. Now, I don't tell anyone to inject or don't inject, it's not my business, but if you ask me as a medical biochemist, looking at RNA per se, I have to tell you, stay away from it as long as you can, as far as you can, because simply with chemically modified DNA, actually they made modifications that are unrepresented in biology, meaning that they have no idea how it works. When you look at the Nobel Prize, it's practically, Bill Gates was paying the molecular biology division at Karolinska Institute 75 million Swedish crowns a year to that department where the chair of the committee was residing, a professor. And besides that, I think the bigger problem is they awarded a Nobel Prize for a technology that has no future in the sense of being biologically applicable.
And yet we see it being fast-tracked. In America, Robert Kennedy Jr. has got his hands full trying to stop mRNA just being fast-tracked into cancer research, all of these things. I think just very quickly, because we only have a couple minutes left, just what do you think for those of us out in the world? We're not scientists, we're not doctors. What do we need to be thinking about? What should we have learned from the COVID experience? Just very quickly, Vibeke.
I think it's important to realizing that we need transparency. That's one of the reasons why I'm a big fan of Bobby Kennedy, is that he wants to give us transparency, and that is what we have been lacking. So if they will give us transparency, give us the data, have independent scientists, as ourselves, for myself, so we could look at the data. The problem is that it has been manipulation and propaganda, and like scientists, independent scientists haven't been heard, only the good voices, so to speak. So I think it's very important to learn from this. Never again lockdowns. That was the most horrendous, crazy thing they ever did to us. Never have vaccine mandates. Never have mandates in any ways when you talk about vaccines. Thank you. And then informed consent. Give the public, give the patient the pros and cons. What is the good thing for me to have that vaccine or treatment? Vaccination is a treatment, it's a medical treatment, and what is the risk for me? And we have forgotten the risk part. That's why our scientific work is so important, because we have shown the risk, and I'm so sad when people ask me, should I be frightened? And the honest answer is yes.
Yeah. Just so you know, you can go to my website, the work that I do, Informed Consent Action Network. We have one of the most powerful attorneys in America named Aaron Siri we've been suing the government. We spent over $28 million over the last 9 years suing the government. One of the things, I don't know if you heard the story, but we went after the Pfizer data. We wanted the Pfizer data from the trials. How did you decide that this vaccine was safe? We were suing the FDA for that information, and the FDA said in the court they needed 75 years before that data would be allowed to be released to the public. We won that lawsuit. It is now in the hands of scientists like yourselves and the world because of that lawsuit. And Maria, just on this idea, there's something about this word vaccines that the entire world, especially the medical professionals, seem to just say, oh, it must be safe because it's called a vaccine. In your work, has your thoughts around that? We just sort of give it this blanket, like it's made by angels. And I mean, even though we know it's made by Pfizer and Moderna that lose lawsuits all the time for death and injury for lying from drugs, what is it about this word vaccines that somehow puts it in a different category?
So first of all, I want to say medical students do not learn a lot about vaccines other than they are safe and effective. We never hear about adjuvants, we never hear about ingredients. And it was an Austrian molecular biologist who worked for the swine flu vaccine and then left the job and started to inform people about vaccines, who told me in 2017, watch Del Bigtree and the High Wire, and I can publicly state, and I did it before, I learned from your educational program, The High Wire, which is aired every Thursday, so much about vaccines, vaccine harmed people, vaccine injured, and all the ingredients, which I have never had the same knowledge to. Never I got that knowledge from university. So let that sink in. So it's people like Del Bigtree and the scientists and doctors, advisors and lawyers he's working with that really shine a light on the truth. And don't forget about the conflicts of interests. And my solution would be, we have to have brave policymakers, and I'm speaking to national parliamentarians and also the MEPs in the European Parliament. We really have to make sure that we have a European Independent Pharmacovigilance Council with independent scientists, as we have here with, for example, Dr. Vibeke Manike. And we really have to make sure that, as we heard, what happened in the past year is not happening again. And as a final statement, take your health in your own hands, and please support grassroots movements as well, because we heard and we can be so successful. We are the 8 billion, and they are a small minority of not elected global entities.
Alan, you really already stated it. Your work, a lot of people want to just say COVID's in the rearview mirror. We've moved on. I don't want to talk about it. Do we need to talk about it, and how is it going to affect the future that we're looking at?
I think we absolutely have to talk about it. Also, I think we have to say there's no such thing as the science. Remember that terrible term. Science is a method of inquiry. And what we have is contestation and an attempt to understand things and methods of research and inquiry. And that's how we get knowledge. And then there's policy. So when we have a government that then outsources all their authority to experts that tell us that we must do this thing, that's a dereliction of duty. What they should be doing is taking bits of advice and then making political decisions. So we need to keep people politically accountable. I think it's really important that people can work with as many people as possible. We've worked with great organizations like HART, and they did the Perseus report we supported. with great women that supported kids called Us for Them, and challenged what was going on in schools with lockdowns, Molly Kingsley and the team, and an array of people. And it's really important that the most important, I think, is courage and bravery, because you see what happens to people that are really well trained and brilliant and experts in their field if you dare to question. And we supposedly live in a free country, and we have to dare to question. We have to have that spirit, everything from the Renaissance through to the Enlightenment, about human thought and inquiry and truth, and a belief in our fellow citizens. And as they attempt to send their rapid response units and the counter-disinformation units, and they may not now call you a conspiracist, but they'll call you far-right or racist, because they'll change the term to try and outlaw you and make you look like you're a bigot or you're crazy. But courage and conviction and a commitment that the majority of the public are decent, hard-working, good people. And we've got a responsibility and a duty to get the questioning and the challenging out as much as possible and to get to the truth. And we do that together, and that's the spirit of needing to keep talking about what happened to make sure it never happens again. We've got a campaign around what's going on with the WHO, but also sovereignty in the UK to make sure that, and to say that we do that because we can be stronger with the public if we're courageous together. And that's the thing that's truly infectious.
Dr. Laszlo Boros, what, you know, from a man who's worked in RNA, you've looked at science. Science is so dependent upon the conversation. Evolution, you know, happens by people that are outside the box, looking at things a new way. What do we have to learn around the science of COVID?
I think after all, the simplest equation from the science point of view, the situation is so bad as far as mRNA is concerned, modified mRNA is concerned, that I think every constitution should contain a liability clause. Simply, every product has to have somebody who is liable for it. And if not, then if someone wants to apply this product, you should be able to use legal and investigative and actually police actions, chain of command, for all and everyone who is trying to invade your body with something that is really shouldn't be there. That's simple.
Thank you. As we wrap this panel up, I don't think this is about instilling fear. And I think that when we think about what CPAC represents and the fact that we're talking about here in Great Britain, you know, our freedoms are only taken away if we do not exercise them. And what I have to say about this pandemic and this experience, as Alan, you so well put, but by speaking up, we make a difference. What they want us to believe is we have no power, we have no voice. And once we've accepted that we do not have a voice, then we have accepted an authoritarian government. And I am telling you, there is a global takeover going on right now, whether we recognize it or not. They want authority over every nation, and it is manipulations through words like health and disease and fear that they get us to sign away, say, well, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, I don't understand it, and so we step down, even though deep down inside of us, we knew something was wrong, we knew it wasn't right, we knew they were taking away our freedoms, but as you pointed out, they humiliated us, they made us embarrassed. But I want to say this, as I travel the world, it appears that nearly 30% of the world, on average, rejected the COVID vaccine. And whether you were one of those people or not, how many just took that vaccine because we didn't feel like we could work, we didn't think we could get on an airplane, and we, did it under duress. But what we have to recognize now is if there was 30% of us, if we'd have known that, and we would have known that if we'd have talked to each other, if we at least, all I'm saying is freedom is in our hands, not in government, in how we vote, but how we speak to each other. If we all speak to each other and realize the power that we have, that we are united, we have all the people it has ever taken to change every political system in the world. We have the control, we have the power, we have the numbers, but we must use our voice now. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, CPAC was instrumental in the fight against the American establishment and the election of President Donald Trump. Now, it's gone global. To talk to us about the role of CPAC against the global establishment, please welcome our chair, Mercedes Schlapp, joined by Matt Schlapp and Andrew Cooper.
Well, that's not good.
What's wrong?
They call out our names, and then some people started to leave.
They're
They have
like,
to
we're
come
done
back.
with you people. You're too much.
They're mostly very polite here.
Yes. Well, so Matt Schlapp and I just celebrated, sorry, Andrew, our 24th wedding anniversary on July 13th. We have 5 daughters. We actually have a wedding next month, August 15th, and then
We're not getting married.
No, our daughter is. And then a second daughter just got engaged. So that's kind of, and we pretty much told them that if they ever become crazy leftists, they'll be cut out of the will. Like, it's done. So that's the goal here.
Well, after they get done with lawfare, there'll be nothing in the will, so it'd probably be okay.
That is true. That is true. But
I've separated the Slapps here
you did.
on their wedding anniversary.
What is that? We can't even hold hands or anything. This is bad. So it's really wonderful to be with Andrew and obviously with my sweet husband, Matt. And they ask us, well, what is CPAC? You know, it's funny because you all, like, obviously this is for some of you. How many have heard about CPAC in the past in this group here? So, which is fantastic, great number. But it really, I want to really, Matt, just start with you first because you had this vision of really helping take this internationally. Why? No vision?
It's not accurate.
Okay.
I'd love to tell you that I had this all plotted out on a napkin. I knew exactly what I was going to do, and we were going to take over this country and take over that country. But Andrew knows the real story, which was I was walking with my mother, who's great. I'm sorry she's not here with us today, but she is still here with us, if you know what I mean. And I'm walking down the hall of CPAC, and this Japanese guy comes up to me and goes, hey, through his interpreter, I've started the Japanese Conservative Union, and we're going to have CPAC. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? In Japan? And they had kind of launched on this whole thing. And I was like, I guess this could go overseas. And then shortly thereafter, Andrew came to see us and said, we want to do CPAC in Australia. So really, the fact is that you had people in countries, and by the way, I talked about doing this with Nigel Farage 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. You know, we were sitting in a bar saying, we got to take CPAC everywhere.
You were sitting in a bar with Nigel, really?
I can't believe it either.
Okay.
He might have been smoking, but it's unknown. But and we talked about the fact like this, we've got to fight back against the globalists by going global. And Andrew and I had a similar conversation. So why the hell did you say we should go do this in Australia?
I recall going to the US to talk to your former CEO, Dan Schneider, and then later to your board of 24 board members, my God. And I remember thinking, I'm here pitching the first CPAC, and then at the end of it, after I've done my little dog and pony show, trying to impress everyone, you go, oh no, we're already doing one in Japan. I thought, oh my God, so it's already happening. The reason I did it, I wanted to do it, to me was proven by, I thought you had a brand that was global, and we had nothing in Australia where the Conservatives gathered together across all the broad spectrum, a celebration of what we believe in. And I wanted to recreate what you guys had done for the last 50 years in the US. I wanted an agenda-setting organisation that wasn't beholden to politicians, that was independent and was values-focused, principled-focused. And I think we've achieved that. You've gone to many CPACs down under in Australia, and we're not quite at the US level yet, but my goal is to beat you on per population. So
it's pretty good, and I'd say that the Mercy worked for President Trump.
He was the best boss ever, the best. I'm serious. The problem with President Trump sometimes is I would be in the Oval Office with him, and then he would literally, something would come up, and then he'd ask me a question, and then he'd do the lip thing. And then he'd go, what does your husband think? And I was literally like, sir, why don't you just call Matt Schlapp and ask him? And that was usually the case in a lot of these conversations.
As much as we put Trump on a stage, CPAC stage, like 50 days after J6, which I think, looking back, was courageous to do and helped bring him back, which was good for our country, I think good for the world. But we're not really aligned, thank you.
Well, and the other thing is that we were the only conservative group that stuck by Donald Trump after J6. That was one of the things. All the other conservative groups really went in a different direction, didn't arm's distance. And when Matt invited Donald Trump to come back that year, the president really, he was down. It was a hard time. It was a really hard time.
He'd been canceled.
And your board members basically said, you need to disinvite
I almost lost my job.
Right.
I almost had to call Andrew and have him come back and talk to the board again.
And you're like, I'm not disinviting the president of the United States.
I don't know how you disinvite someone who you've invited. I just don't even know how to even think about that. I remember thinking about that. I was like, what if they forced me to uninvite Donald Trump? And I was like, would I send him an email or would I call him? Or what do you do? Do you send him a FedEx? And then I was like, I don't think it's possible. And I would try to pretend like how the conversation would go. And they all went very badly in my mind. So anyway, it was the right thing to stick by him. My point is, though, it's really not about a politician, not one, even when they're amazing. It's not about a party. Look at what you're dealing with in your country. Many of you might still be Tories, were Tories, or I guess they call themselves conservatives. I don't think they deserve the name of conservative personally. Things change, and we're not aligned to any particular person. It's about the issues. Really, I think for Mercy, for Andrew, for myself, separate countries, obviously, and the other partners we have in the other countries, all we want to do is for the politicians to do the right thing and what they said they would do. If they lose in trying to do the right thing, I think we're okay with that. The problem is it's almost always the opposite, right?
Yeah, absolutely, Matt. And the experience in Australia over the last 7 years has been, they're a little bit scared of CPAC. What's it about? Is it like a Donald Trump?
Is that why when I go talk to some of these guys, they take a step back when I say who I am? They're like, okay.
No, that's other
Like
reasons.
a political virus I might give them or something.
No, I'm not going to comment on that. But if you stick by the values, the good politicians, the good representatives, they'll gravitate towards. And what's happened in Australia is we're now gone from, oh, should we speak at CPAC, to I need to speak at CPAC.
That's right.
I need that platform. I need to demonstrate to the base that I am a conservative and I believe in the values of conservatism. And I think that's taken a long time, and it's going to take time here in the UK. Culturally, Australia is more similar to the UK than we are to the US. So I perceive here it'll take some time, but at some point in the future, if Reform and the Conservatives and whatever other parties are around, are they still battling and competing? I envisage that they will all come and speak here. And that's what's happening in Australia now. The leaders...
The one thing Andrew's not being honest about is you might be culturally similar to the Aussies, but it's very hard to survive their version of the Winston Churchill dinner. Happy hour starts at 2:30 in the afternoon, and by the time the dinner gets going, the auction, I think people are bidding and they don't really know what they're doing. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, the secret to a great auction is early drinks. There's no doubt about that.
And I think one of the reasons why their CPAC is so much fun, because your people really do have a great spirit, but they're really pretty depressed when you get to the political part of it, because they haven't had a great leader in a long time.
No, they haven't. And this is why it's so exciting this year, and this is why I believe we are on a path back to a conservative government, is that we have three parties tangling with each other, conservative parties, jockeying for position, but when the push comes to shove, they will form a coalition government and take out Albanese in the Labor government. And it's exciting. And the thing is that those three leaders, for the first time ever, are CPAC endorsed. Like, we believe in all three of them. So whoever forms the government, whoever forms the prime ministership, we believe we've got three jockeys on three horses.
If you actually get a conservative prime minister, Mercy and I want to come celebrate with you, because that would be an amazing achievement that CPAC will have had a lot to do with.
Yeah, it would be amazing, and we would love you and everyone in this room to come celebrate with us, because we've got to celebrate our wins, right? There's not too many of them around.
Let me tell you where the wins really are, Mercy. I'm going to ask you a question.
I thought I was moderating, but apparently someone took.
No, but you're more of an expert. They call him chairman here, by the way. Okay, but the Mercy.
Yes.
South and Central America, all around the USA. We're having huge victories in the Spanish-speaking world.
Well, this is very personal to me. My father turned 91 this year, and he's 91. And, you know, he grew up in Cuba, was very successful, you know, self-made man. And when Fidel Castro came into power in the late 1959 revolution, they came in and took his business. They literally asked for the key and said, hand it over, and assigned him to a role. And my father was like, I'm not going to do this. What's going on here? And so he decides to join a counter-revolutionary group to take down the Castro regime. And basically, there was a mole in the group, and they got thrown into jail, and half of his group was executed. He heard the shots of these men being executed by these horrific military officials, these terrorists. And my father tells the story that every time they would, you know, he would hear the shots in the jungle, they would blindfold the men, they would tie them up. The last words they would say was, "Viva Cristo Rey," "Viva Christ the King," and how brave these men were in their fight for freedom. So I grew up listening to these stories of my parents and their fleeing the communist country. We ended up in America, and for my father, as he always says, he goes, I'm not Cuban American, I'm American, and I love this country for the opportunities and the freedoms that we have here. But he also taught me, as a little girl, our democracy is fragile. Our freedoms are fragile. We can lose them very quickly. And we have an obligation as the people, Matt, you talked about the issues, but it's really about the people that we do this work at CPAC. It is about every day Matt and I get up, we pray, we have our cup of coffee, and we say, how can we make sure that we protect freedoms in our country? And now with, I believe, what God has brought to our hearts to take this freedom movement across the globe, and it really has been under God's sovereignty, under his reign, that we have been able to go to over 12 countries and have had massive successes in places like Argentina, in places like Hungary, in places like Poland, in America. And it's why we're going to fight till the end. It's going to be our tireless effort.
But all throughout Central and South America, too, we're seeing all these victories.
Yes, and I would say, you know, we've brought, one of the things we've been able to do at CPAC is no one knew who Javier Milei was. No one knew.
Javier Milei, and I was like, they're like, he could be the next president of Argentina. I looked at him and said, no way.
And then he came out with a chainsaw at CPAC that he handed over to Elon Musk, and Matt and I were in the backstage going, what the heck has just happened at CPAC?
I was in the front. I was in the front row when that happened.
Yeah.
With one of my donors, and we looked at each other and go, what world are we in?
Exactly.
Where the president of Argentina, you know, brings his chainsaw out.
Right.
That he smuggled in.
Well, it was in Maryland. So CPAC in D.C. is actually in Maryland, and Maryland does not believe that a gun should ever be in anyone's possession at any time. And this is something you'll just have to give Americans credit for, which is we understand how important that is, because what did they do in Iran? They always take away the guns first. What did they do in Cuba? Yeah. They always take away the guns first, because then you can't fight back against the authoritarians. So in the chainsaw, which was a working chainsaw and pretty big, they had to take out the whatever it was that made it work. I don't know if it was a spark plug or whatever the thing was. They had to, the authorities showed up to make sure they made it so it wouldn't work. And so this chainsaw's out there, and all I kept thinking of the chainsaw was like, I'd really like to have one of these too. And so Elon Musk was hanging around the back, and he came out, and I was like, you're a pretty rich guy. And he was like, yes. I was like, you can buy anything you want. And he was like, I can. I was like, well, then, so why don't you give CPAC the chainsaw? Because you can probably get any chainsaw you want. And he was like, no way. I was like, well, what is the richest man in the world going to do with a chainsaw? He's like, it's going on my desk.
Yeah, it was in his desk.
Now, I have heard, I know this is being live streamed, so this is dangerous, but I've heard that chainsaw might still be at the White House.
Ooh, okay.
So one of the things I have to do, because I'm considered an insider, is to figure out a way to get that chainsaw. So I'm working.
You need that chainsaw. And you know what we've got to do with
and
that?
then we're going to auction it off in CPAC Australia.
That's right.
That's right.
No, look, but I do think, look, it's like the Malay phenomenon that's had such an impact in Latin America. We did CPAC Paraguay, we've done CPAC Mexico. We really piss off the socialists and the communists. And let me tell you, I get great pleasure out of doing that. But why? But why? Because we know that communism doesn't work. We know that communism tears you down. They want to take over your family. They want to take over your nation. They think they're the solution. They want to replace the government with God and family. And so we have to fight against that. And I think that's what you're seeing in Central and South America. We're looking to do an event in the Western Hemisphere as well. And, you know, for us, it's not just events. I mean, our goal is to really combine these fractured coalitions to win. So, Matt, I do want to go to you because CPAC Poland was one of those elections where, to this day, the president of Poland came to you and said, I would not have won if it wasn't for CPAC.
Well, I might tone that down just a little bit. I give him the credit, right? Because it was amazingly courageous for anybody in this time. Look, you can get assassinated very easily these days, as you've just seen in your country with this wonderful, brave woman who lost her life for the cause. We've seen it in our country with Charlie's murder and with the assassination attempt on Steve Scalise, who's one of our leaders in Congress, with a couple of assassination attempts against Donald Trump. And, you know, I don't really talk about it, but for all of those who are in the fight, the threats are very real and they're very regular, and these people are evil, hateful, violent, and we should take their threats seriously because they mean it. But I get these, I was telling Andrew, I get these crazy calls all the time. Oh, you should have a CPAC on Saturn, on Mars. I mean, it's just everywhere. It's like you should have a CPAC here or there.
Well, Elon Musk should definitely fund that one.
Yeah, for sure. So you have all these ideas, and then someone said you should have a CPAC in Poland. And I was like, wait, and I'm always like dollars and cents guy. I'm like, well, you got to figure out how to pay for it. How are we going to pay for it if we go all the way to Poland? And I'm talking to some Polish friends in America, and we're going through this whole thing. And none of it made any sense. And I know Michael was here from Poland. I don't think he's here today. But I was like, you know, what we do with a lot of this is we pray about it and try to use my wits. I think that's a great word, wits, by the way. And we said, what the hell? We're going to do it. We're just going to do CPAC Poland. And the Polish people who were advising me said, really? You're just going to do it like that? You're just going to do it? I was like, yeah, we're just going to do it. And I was like, when would we do it? And they'd be like, oh, it's going to be like 5 days before the election. And I was like, is the candidate up or down? Oh, he's down. I was like, is he down a lot? Yeah. And I was like, why is he down? And they said, well, he's an outsider. He's not really tied to anything. He doesn't really have a party. You know, they're saying that he's morally not fit for office. And they said all these things. I was like, he sounds awesome. He's not tied to any of the power. He doesn't have to do anyone's bidding. They're saying he's a terrible person, which probably means he's a really great person. And that means they're also scared of him. Sounds like our kind of guy. So we jumped right in, and then it turns out that we were very aligned with the Trump administration. They sent Kristi Noem over there, and we had CPAC in what I would say was kind of MAGA version of CPAC of Poland, and I do believe we made a massive difference in the race. And okay, so here's what happens. Then you have the one victory in Poland, and it's amazing how then other people start to say, well, wait a minute. We're in this neighborhood. Maybe we can be a little bolder about standing up against net zero or transing our kids, or you name the issue. They start to stand up and say, yeah, we can do this. And then I realize it's like the American Revolution. Sorry, it's the wrong analogy in the wrong country, but let me just keep going. Don't hate me. but it was about, by the way, you guys declared your independence from your king too, right? He's there, he's wonderful, but he doesn't run your government anymore. So like everyone kind of got to the same conclusion eventually. And the point was this, it was about 8% of the people in America that said, I'm willing to take my treasure, my sacred honor, my fortune, put it on the line for freedom, for independence. And that's an amazing thing. By the way, that is still true today. If you look at every great movement, it is a slender minority. Sometimes the bad guys have a slender minority, right, and they were able to take over. So maybe groups like CPAC and efforts like this that are grassroots focused, some of you are rich, some of you aren't rich, some of you are powerful, some of you are less powerful, some of you are young, some of you are old. We all come at the station we are in life. What if we banded together and said that we're going to stand for some just common sense things? Like when we flip the switch, we want the lights to come on. If we want to have a political opinion, we can express it without going to jail, right? What if we stood for these principles, and what if they became dominant again?
Andrew, what's your biggest threat? What do you think is the biggest threat right now?
In Australia? Or?
In Australia, I would say in the globe.
Look, I think there's a playbook, there's a leftist playbook that's been rolled out similarly across particularly the Anglosphere. I think Trump has taken a lot of measures to deal with that in the US, but we're still struggling in most of the other countries, in the UK and in Australia and New Zealand, and from what I see in Canada as well. So I think where CPAC can help is propagate kind of a fight back playbook, and I think we see some of that. Like in Australia, we've seen what's happened with reform here, the frustration with the Conservatives here has led to reform, and we've seen a similar thing now follow in Australia. And it's not so much that we've copied it. What it's done to the population, the Conservatives in Australia, is actually you can go down an alternative path. You can express your frustration by taking your support elsewhere, and then that puts pressure on the Conservatives here, puts pressure on the Conservative parties in the US. So what's the greatest threat? It's the playbook. The solution to me lies in learning from the fightbacks that are successful in the other CPAC countries and taking that back and applying it as best you can in your own country.
Give the audience, you've been to so many of these CPACs across the globe. What is that common thread, and how would you explain CPAC USA, which is like the motherhood, the mothership, I would say, of CPACs right now?
Look, to me, CPAC is, the way I looked at it when I first wanted to do a CPAC was that the American Constitution, to me, is something, it's a very special document. We don't have anything like that in Australia. And CPAC, upon its start with Reagan and its first CPAC and forever after there, has basically been, to me, a kind of a touchstone into an organisation that wants to protect that Constitution. And I want a bit of that in Australia, and I think the whole Western world would benefit from a bit of that. And I'm not talking about the politics of the day that go ebbs and flows in the US. I'm talking about that founding document. To me, that says a lot about all the principles that I think we all share. So that was my motivation to get involved in CPAC. If I may, Mercy, because I know time's almost up, I just want to say to everyone here that CPAC, the organisation, though, isn't the panacea. It's not the solution. The solution is with the people in the room. That's right. It's the people in the room. If you subscribe to what Liz is trying to do, what we're trying to do, then next year, bring your friends, bring your children, right? Build this up into a movement. Make this kind of a party political agnostic organisation, but it's a movement of people that share the values, and bring people along, because, I'm in, now for the rest of my life, and it's because of what you guys have done. It's what Reagan did 50 years ago, and I'm hoping in 10 years' time I can celebrate something special here in London, man.
You know what they say, Andrew, all the time, when they shame me online or our organization, they say, Reagan would be so angry with what you're doing for this reason or that reason. and it stings. Because if I think of the founders of my country, if I think of Ronald Reagan, you think of Margaret Thatcher, Winston Churchill. By the way, I think these people, my religion tells me these people are alive. And I always wonder, like, what would they think? They're right here, right now. Would they be, you make a decision in the modern context. Is it right? Is it wrong? It's our duty to honor these great people and to continue to make the right decisions. And I do think that I feel a very special kinship to all of you because I'm American. And my forefathers, by and large, came from these islands. And I feel a kinship to the people of Australia because we're all a part of this thing. The English-speaking world has been so belittled and maligned that we're yesterday. I think we should be tomorrow and today and be proud of who we are. And our three countries should work very closely together to make that happen.
And we have to preserve our history, preserve our culture, teach our children, teach our grandchildren. It goes beyond even us. And so to be part of this incredible journey, I think has been such one of the greatest honors of my life to do this alongside my husband and be able to bring our children along in this process, because we have to be in this battle. It's a bigger battle than all of us, and it is a battle against evil, and it's something that we have to be committed to do from the moment we're young, and even in our younger years, into we're older, because the fight doesn't end. We have to continue in this fight, but it's really, Andrew's become a dear friend of ours. We have so many of our friends, international friends. And I do encourage you, we do have our CPAC USA, that's next April, believe 14th through the
7th through the 14th.
No.
14th through 17th?
17th.
Okay.
And when you think
one
about,
of those dates?
It is like, you know how there's like the United Nations? This is like the conservative United Nations. This is like everyone coming together from, it used to be really purely American, to like across the globe. I don't know how many engagements and marriages have come out of CPAC. So if you're single, I would highly encourage you to go.
It's better than online dating. It's because it's in person.
It is in person. And it is truly like you get out of there and you're just inspired. And I know what's going to happen here. I already know it. We have planted the seed here at CPAC Great Britain. This is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger every year.
Let me just take a point of privilege here. Mercy brought up our anniversary. We met working in the Bush White House. I was in the political department. She was in the media department. The media people hate the political people because the political people are always getting the media people bad press. But we overcame that. I will say this, when you do this, at least in the American context, we say this ain't beanbag. It's not easy. It's not easy on families. It's not easy on spouses. They really come after you hard. And the thing is, we really don't do that. I don't like the people that I fight against politically, but I have to say I really let go of hate. I don't want anything to happen to them in their personal lives. I'm not trying to destroy their ability to make a living. They want to destroy you. They want to destroy us. Now, that shouldn't make us overreact, but I do want to say, when Mercy said to Andrew, asked Andrew, what's the best thing about CPAC? It is the people. We said last night when we did not stay out with the party group last night. We went home because we were so dang tired. But the first thing Mercy said to me is, we have met the most amazing people. That's what it's all about. That's why we do this. We're building a community that we believe in borders, but in a sense, the community's borderless. And we're going to help each other. And they might have all the money. They might get all the headlines. They might get all the big jobs. It might look like the battle's over. But together, working together in all these important countries, we're going to beat them. We're going to win. And you're going to do it, and we're going to do it.
Andrew, last word.
I know you're right, Matt. I just want to encourage everyone here to You probably just met the Slaps for the first time, but I've known them for a long time. They have been put through the ringer. I haven't seen a couple having to beat off the attacks and whatnot. I would encourage you right now to thank them for the work that they're doing and encourage them to come back next year to CPAC London.
Thank you.
Okay. I think time's up.
Time's
That's
up.
sweet.
Thank you all so much. It's an honor to
Thank
be
you, guys.
here.
That's very sweet. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, all the way from Victoria, Australia, please welcome to the stage Senator Bridget McKenzie.
Well, CPAC, well done. Standing up, staying loud and proud, day 3. We've learnt a lot, and I think we've found our tribe here in Great Britain. It's fantastic to be with you. And if I have one message that I would like to convey, it's the message about hope and confidence. Because without hope, our families, our communities, our countries, and our very civilisation will not endure. Conservatives get a bad rap. They do at home in Australia. I'm sure they do on the streets of Great Britain as well. And that's why an organisation like CPAC is so great, because no matter who you vote for, no matter who you support, conservatism as a philosophy is a very human philos. And to actually come together, irrespective of your political parties, is so, so important, because as goes Britain, as goes the West. And we need to save not just Great Britain, but Australia, the United States, Western Europe, South America, liberal democracies, one and all. But as the great British humorist G.K. Chesterton understood, he talked about the flawed conservatives when he wrote, "The business of progressives is to go on making mistakes. The business of conservatives is to prevent those mistakes from being corrected." And ain't that the truth? So I say today, our job is not to defend the political sediment forged in previous cultural and political upheavals. Our job is not to be mere defenders of the status quo, or worse, managerialists. No more tinkering, people. We're fools if in the name of conservatism we seek to defend to the death institutions that have become corrupted and debased. We are not simply time markers between Labor governments. So what are we about? If you strip it back to its bone, because I'm sure everybody in this room, as we've heard over the last 3 days, there's multiple versions of what a conservative is. Conservatism is about the pursuit of the good life, a philosophy that guards the stability of today by honouring the limits of human wisdom and the inheritance of our ancestors. And we do that so that small platoons of our family and our communities can truly flourish. We are unashamedly proud and love our families, our communities, and our nations. And if anything's become apparent this century, our citizens at home, and I would suggest here, no longer believe that they're sovereign within their own borders. The social contract with the people is broken. And a stark example of that in Australia is the topic of migration. When borders are made intentionally porous, people rightfully act to reassert their sovereignty. At home, we traditionally have operated what's called a non-discriminatory immigration policy. And yet we take in more migrants per head than any other Western nation. Successive centre-right governments in Australia achieved something quite remarkable. We stopped illegal immigration that's plaguing so many island nations, including the United Kingdom here. At the time, we had over 50,000 desperate souls jump into 800 different leaky boats and make the very dangerous journey to our shores. And far too many people drowned. The left wing in our country called us out for not being compassionate or humane in stopping that dirty people smuggler trade. But the Australian people supported the centre-right government on our Sovereign Borders initiative, and we stopped the boats. We stopped the drownings, despite the relentless attacks of the left. And that is now mainstream policy. So that's what you can do. That's what you can do when you make the right decisions for the right reasons and have the political will to go through with it and to take the hits. It now becomes mainstream policy on the right and the left, sovereign borders. Yet whilst we shut the back door to illegal migration, we left the front door wide open. Wide open. Now we have a left-wing Labor government who runs one of the highest per capita immigration intakes in the developed world. We just had our federal budget handed down. Our own federal budget papers say between 22-23 and 27-28, Labor will have brought in over 2 million additional arrivals. Now, we're only a country of a little over 27 million people. That's a lot. And it's not just the left wing in politics that's got the playbook on, diluting our nations. Our economy has become addicted to the intake. Backed by vested interests of big business, big universities and big government, all in the name of growing the economy, we're also diluting the dominant culture at a rapid pace. So national GDP grows ever higher. That makes prime ministers and treasurers and businesses very, very happy. But that growth at the national GDP level masks the real pain at the GDP per capita, the household level. Living standards going backwards. So if you love your country and respect your past and want to build a secure future for your children, I believe you shouldn't be apologising for discriminating about who can come and live in your country. Not on race, but on values. If you believe Sharia laws are superior to the laws that my great country inherited from yours, then I'm afraid Australia is not the place for you. We also, in our country, allow new migrants to access up to 17 different taxpayer-funded initiatives. Nobody asked the Australian people if that was okay. So the Australian government ministers, symbols are really important, and Australian government ministers under the Labor Party stand in front of 3 flags. If you go down to the High Commission here in London, you'll see not one, like out the front of the Canadian embassy or, the US flag. You'll see 3 flags flown out the front of the High Commission of Australia. Not one Australian agreed for our 1 flag to actually be exchanged for 3. And if the government had have bothered to ask the Australian people, it would have been a resounding no, just like it was with our referendum question. Why do they insist on 3 flags? Because they're ashamed of the British bits in the Australian flag. They're ashamed of the crosses that our flag contains. Our flag has the United Kingdom's 3 crosses of St George, St Andrew and St Patrick, but we also importantly have our own Southern Cross, our great Southern Cross, a constellation in the southern sky on our flag, which situates the British values within the Australian geography, highlighting our unique place as an outpost of British heritage in now a region which is going to be the focus of this century. I believe the British bits of our flag are the best parts. Britain has given to Australia equality under law, our parliamentary democracy, freedom, private property rights, the English language, we share a constitutional monarchy. We do have a constitution, Andrew. I'll just correct Mr Cooper, who was up here before. And it is a constitution that we like to say is a bit Washminster. It's very practical. Has the best bits of the Brits and has borrowed from the Americans to make our parliamentary democracy one of the last to be set up, to borrow the best around the world. Nobody asked Australians when we signed up to the fantasy of net zero if they also supported trashing private property rights as we rolled out renewable projects across our beautiful farmland. No one asked Australians if they agreed that a man could be a woman. No one asked them whether it was okay for men to compete in women's sports, to be housed in women's prisons. All these decisions were made without the people's permission. So governments over time have ceded their responsibility, their accountability to unelected bureaucrats, faceless men, global institutions and unelected statutory bodies. It's the same here in Britain as it is in Australia. Recently, our Labor government passed legislation to hand over the final say on parole decisions for federal offenders. That's the latest abdication. Let's be very clear, this isn't about somebody shoplifting from Harrods or Coles. These people are convicted of terrorism offences, convicted of online sex, child sex crimes, convicted of drug importation. So on April the 1st, our Parliament agreed to move those parole decisions from the Attorney General to another expert panel. Another nail in the coffin for ministerial responsibility and another erosion of Parliament and therefore the people's sovereignty. If anything Conservatives hate more than the left, it's power being concentrated. I fear that I will be the last senior Cabinet Minister to take responsibility as the accountable entity and resign my commission. Not only to keep my own personal integrity, but far more importantly, to keep the integrity of our Westminster conventions. Every decision that's made by a faceless commissioner, by an expert panel, denies accountability and denies the people a role in that decision making. And I outlined all those decisions that have been more, and there's more. COVID, classic example in Australia. We literally slide from a democracy to a bureaucracy. So it's clear that there's a global push, a global textbook, if you like, to undermine the very best of our British heritage by left-wing globalists. They're very well funded, they're very disciplined, they're relentless. And if we think we can fight them in our little bedrooms on our social media wars or at Christmas dinners when we're having the 100th argument with our teenage kids about why what they think is not what they should be thinking. Thank you, education system. That we need to unite, we need to engage, we need to professionalise because our opponent is real, dangerous and want to destroy us. And our own compassion, kindness, tolerance, all those great Christian values are literally allowing them to do it to us. Do not mistake we are in a war and we have to stand together and fight. So right now, while we're seeing this sort of fall apart in front of our very eyes, the issues in my country are very similar to so many of the issues I've heard over the last 3 days. And our people, our citizens, are rightfully feeling powerless because they literally are powerless. And our job is to change that because the threats that the West faces are very present and very real. And to emphasise that, in conclusion, let me just give one final example of what's at stake. Just a few days ago, on July the 6th, the People's Republic of China test-fired a long-range ballistic missile from a submerged nuclear-powered submarine into the South Pacific, into waters the Pacific nations have declared a nuclear-free zone. Australia, New Zealand and the United States protested within hours. It happened the very day Australia signed a defence treaty with Fiji. That's the neighbourhood I live in. That's the backyard that Australia protects on behalf of the West. That is where this century's dealings, the economic boom, challenges will present themselves. And we do that with our allies. And yet there are threats to cut foreign aid to Pacific countries if they align themselves to China. Now, foreign aid in forums like this can be a very popular target. especially if hundreds of millions of dollars in aid are going to, say, Papua New Guinea rugby league team in Australia's national NRL competition. But let me tell you something about the South Pacific. Soft diplomacy is literally our ballast against the PRC in the Indo-Pacific. The PRC right now is demonstrating its strategic weapons for all to see and building infrastructure projects on tiny island nations at a rate we cannot match. So anybody suggesting that Australia should withdraw aid, involvement and relationships in the Indo-Pacific is literally music to Xi Jinping's ears. That's exactly what the CCP would like us to do. Our weapons are those of shared cultural ties, a love of family, faith, and of course football. And sorry, Brits, that's one thing we didn't pick up from you. I am madly Australian rules. But in this case, our bond with the South Pacific nations is around rugby and rugby league. Faith obviously being Christianity. So the Conservatives' task, that is a very real issue that's happening right now. So the decisions we make and take in our separate spaces need to always have our eyes lifted to the horizon, because the number one thing we need to be looking after is the defence of our nation state and our allies. Conservatives' task is obviously to honour our collective wisdom of our forebears, to be good stewards of the present. We're not anti-environment, we're just anti-crazy emissions programs that will send us broke. And to bequeath to our children and to our children unseen their rightful inheritance. So our mission must be to put the serve back into conservatism. Globally, the left has been marching through our institutions, whether it's our courts, our schools, our universities, and in Australia, you won't find much more woke institutions than our sporting teams, unfortunately. I said my job at the start of this was to give us hope. Because you can see now in Britain, you are not alone. You are not alone. And you're not going to bear this challenge alone. We need to stand firm. We need to stand up for the things we believe in. We need to be brave in our public conversations, both in our own homes and workplaces and communities. And for those of us that have the great privilege to lead in business, in parliaments, in community organisations, to make that a reality. Because we do believe in the good life, equality, freedom, family, community and country. The people are stirring in every country represented in this room. They need leaders who are brave enough to face the enemy, strong enough to fight them, and in the end we will defeat them, because the people need us to be worthy of them. Thank you. It's been great. I can't wait to come to the next one. This is just the beginning, England. I'm really excited. So, go.
Ladies and gentlemen, people on the right across the English-speaking world are standing up together to fight for a common cause. To talk about the importance of the Anglosphere, please welcome to the stage former Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Liz Truss, accompanied by Senator Bridget McKenzie, Leader of the National Party in the Australian Senate, Greg Swenson, Chairman of Republicans Overseas UK, Niall Gardner of the Heritage Foundation, and Ian Paisley Jr., former MP for North Antrim.
You go to the far right?
I go to the far right.
Oh, I like, my mum told me, I told my mum I'd listened to your speech and she said, oh, I remember hearing from the 80s.
Well, good morning. The Anglosphere has been responsible, I think, for some of the greatest innovations across the world. If you look at the constitution originally developed in these islands that has been exported to America, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, it has been the basis of modern democracy and much of the success in the modern world. But what we are now facing is an Anglosphere where increasingly the things that we believe in, free speech, free enterprise, the nation state, are under attack from within our own countries. So my first question for our 4 panelists is, which is the most woke of the Anglosphere countries? Is it Australia? Is it the United Kingdom under the leadership of Andy Burnham? Is it America, where we're seeing people like Mandami win mayoral races? Or is it Canada,
the Canadians aren't
where
here,
we have the former governor of the Bank of England, not content with crashing the British economy, is now busy crashing the Canadian economy? I'm going to start with you, Ian Paisley.
Liz, as the Canadians aren't here, I think we can all agree that Canada's the problem.
They don't even have an Navy, Army, Air Force.
Yeah. The voice of God became a Northern Ireland voice of God. What happened there? That was very, very impressive. Before I say anything, Liz, I think we need to thank you for bringing CPAC to the UK and doing it with such power. Well done. Galvanising the Conservative right and getting us all on the same hymn sheet and getting us to point to one direction and stop shooting our own soldiers is so important if we're ever going to win. And we are going to win, but we have to do this. So well done, Liz. That's been absolutely brilliant. And I think who is the most woke probably really doesn't matter ultimately. We've got to beat that. And we've got to beat it, whether it's starting off. I mean, one of your Australian colleagues today mentioned that Australia's probably about 5-10 years behind some of the issues where we are. Well, you know, let's not let them get any further than that. Let's head that off now. If Canada's ahead of us in this, I'll pray for them, but let's make sure it stops there. And let's get together and fight this united. Because there are things which unite us. Of course, there's things that divide us. But there's things which unite us, and let's take this forward together. Let's get a grip on it.
So, Bridget, when you come to the UK, do you think things are worse here than they're in Australia?
I think it is worse in Australia. I think your heritage is a lot more present here. You can't walk very far around London without seeing reminders of your past. You go to Westminster, there's Edmund Burke. So it's present physically. We are very far away. Our future is in Asia. We've got 2-year-olds at childcare writing apology letters to Indigenous Australians for our forebears. That's what's happening to our children in Australia. We've got Jewish students, Jewish lecturers, officers being urinated on in the most prestigious universities in the country. I think on any measure, I would argue, loving all your countries, I would argue we are the most woke at the moment.
Niall.
Thank you, Liz. And I mean, I don't dispute, the level of wokeness in Australia.
It's not a prize I
Canada.
want to win.
Yeah, and Canada especially is kind of a real basket case, frankly, under left-wing control. I don't fear for the future of the United States. I think in the US there's a huge fight back against woke ideology, and conservatives are winning in the United States. I do worry about what's happening here in the UK. The United Kingdom, I think, is in serious trouble in terms of the advance of far left-wing woke ideology, censorship of freedom of speech, the Orwellian, socialist style of government we have now. And Andy Burnham, it has to be said, will be even worse than Keir Starmer. Starmer was an absolute disaster, but Burnham is even more ideologically left-wing. And yesterday he was, attacking my former boss, Margaret Thatcher, and attacking Thatcherism. Well, I'd say to Andy Burnham, that Margaret Thatcher won 3 general elections in a row. What has Andy Burnham ever won, actually? He's a complete socialist charlatan with no democratic mandate. And I really do worry about what's going to happen in the UK in the next 2 or 3 years under Burnham and his, socialist, Politburo. So we should be very concerned about what's happening here in Britain. And the British people have got to fight back. This is a truly great nation. The British people should be really proud of their history, their culture, and everything that Britain has achieved in the past. And the British people have got to stand up to the far left who are in power at this time and frankly throw them out at the next election.
Greg, what can the rest of the Anglosphere learn from the fight back that's taking place in America?
Yeah, it's fixable, and that's the good news. And I'm with you. I would say right now, Canada is probably the worst. But remember, we in America invented woke, and we exported it to this great country. And I'm feeling a little...
We're not very grateful for
No, you shouldn't be. Don't thank me. But I think, what we've proven, even though we started it and we invented it, and we do have some lingering wokeness with, you mentioned Mamdani, you've had, 4 Democratic primaries in the last 3 or 4 weeks that have been won by like the super woke. But 2 things. Remember that 4 out of those 5 were in districts that President Trump won between 11 and 21 points. So they're in really, really left-leaning areas, and that's not suggesting that this is a nationwide trend. But the second thing is look, this is fixable. And when President Trump won, he didn't just back away from wokeness. He clubbed it like a baby seal, which is not very woke. He said, no, just this DEI nonsense is over. Pete Hegseth eliminated it from the military. And so it's not just backing away, and yeah, we need to change the culture and fight back, but it can be eliminated by the right leadership.
One of the things that Donald Trump has pursued is taking on the deep state in America, which is still an ongoing battle. And I'm not convinced that the right, certainly in Britain, but also Australia and Canada, understands how much of a problem that is. Niall, how can we persuade the British right that dismantling the blob has to be part of the solution?
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Liz. And we saw the nefarious efforts by the left to even prevent Donald Trump from running for re-election as president. And the left, will always try to stand in the way of democracy because they don't like election results when they lose. This is how the left operates. They're doing the same here in the United Kingdom with Nigel Farage, trying to prevent him really from leading the British people out of the socialist wilderness. And the left, they really hate democracy. They hate accountability. They hate transparency. And they will do anything in order to thwart the democratic will of the American people or the British people. And let's be very clear about what's happening to Nigel Farage here in the UK. It's exactly the same tactics the left used in the United States against President Trump. They failed miserably, it has to be said, in America. I believe they will fail miserably here in the United Kingdom as well.
Bridget, you talked about what kids are being taught in school in Australia. Even though the left have pursued this progressive agenda, and they've been pursuing it for 100 years, 50 years, and they have succeeded in shifting that narrative, do you think those of us on the right are proud enough of what countries like Britain, Australia, and America brought to the world? And what do we need to be prepared to say?
Yeah, Liz, it's a really good question. We had a referendum a couple of years ago in Australia which asked the Australian people whether they wanted to change our constitution to basically divide Australia into Indigenous people with one set of rules and everyone else. Australians So when my party came out and said we're not voting for that, we were in the 35% of polling section. People were screaming at us, you're going to be on the wrong side of history, blah, blah, blah. Australians quietly went into their ballot booth and said no, to in an extraordinary proportion. So that to me says Australians are naturally conservative, they're very proud of their country, but they don't want to offend people. So that's why, Liz, people like us have to say the unspeakable, be out there.
You say a bit of unspeakable things now, please, Bridget.
Yes, yes, about truth, so that it opens the door for everyday Australians to have those same conversations. So when you talk about the education system, I used to lecture in education at Monash University. I believe that it is so entrenched now, and having been a part of a government that tried to reform the education system 3 times and lost 3 out of 3, the only way we're going to actually fix those sort of things is defund them and rebuild them, because it is so entrenched now. And you really only understand that once you attempt serious reform as an incoming government. So I'm of a belief that the intent's there, and that's my job and other people that think like me to have that internal fight to get the outcome at a future Conservative government.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's been completely infiltrated.
It's appalling what happens.
I remember going into a primary school in my former constituency, and I was told the kids were learning about the British Empire. And I just asked the class, well, do you think the empire was a good thing or a bad thing? And they said, a good thing, they shouted out. And the teacher said, we haven't started teaching the course yet. Oh. But I thought it was quite interesting.
The re-education program starts tomorrow.
The immediate instinct of the British kids was, this is a good thing, we're kind of proud of this. But then it was like, we haven't started the lesson yet. And they were saying the teachers were so ashamed that the kids had shouted this out. Ian, you represented one of the most patriotic parts of the United Kingdom. What did you see in terms of the difference between your constituents' views and what they were hearing from the elite?
Well, look, the elite think they're unchallengeable, think they can't be put to the side. I remember as a government minister in Northern Ireland trying to sack a civil servant. What a radical idea. The civil servant had done something appalling. And the head of the civil service said, I'll handle that for you, and promoted him. A few years later, the guy had to then be sacked because of other issues. So the public see this, and they are really, really annoyed, because they want to elect politicians who are in charge. And if the politicians get it wrong, kick them out. They don't want the bureaucrats to be running the politicians at a separate level. There is a philosophy in this, and we could end up forgetting our own history. And our nations have wonderful, intertwined kith and kin history that brings us together. And it reminds me of that beautiful verse written by St. Paul in Romans. Nothing can separate us. And of course, he was talking about nothing can separate us from the love of God, principalities, devil, anything, sin, nothing can separate us from God. And that is the motto of the Irish Guards, qui separat, nothing can separate us. And it was put there for a reason, because as a people, as the Anglosphere, we should not allow anything to separate us or to destroy or erode our identity and history, which is founded in a Christian faith, which we can share and we should be proud of. And we've been told, and our kids have been told, you can't be proud of that stuff. It's dangerous. Well, let's be proud of it again.
Greg, in 1776, there was a bit of a split in the Anglosphere when some rebels declared independence against the United Kingdom. We're still not happy about that. But do you think that we need to bring the band back together again?
Definitely. Look, remember the founding fathers were Englishmen for the most part. And
Ulstermen?
even our, yes, that's right, that's right. What did you say yesterday? 40% of Washington's army?
40% of Washington's army were Ulster Scotch.
Yeah.
Think of that.
What percent, sorry?
40%. Ulster Scotch. And 40% of your presidents trace their roots to the top right-hand corner of Ulster.
Fantastic trivia, thank you. But aside from the great Ulstermen that were, aside from the great Ulstermen, we also have the great documents that were all based on the great English documents or British documents, the Magna Carta, the Bill of Rights. And again, the founders were thought of themselves as Englishmen. And it all came down, this is great about America. They only raised taxes 5%, and we shot them. So when I was deported from this country because of tax reasons, I didn't advocate shooting anybody. I just had to leave, unfortunately. So look, it's such a proud history and a proud relationship that we've had because we are the offspring of Great Britain, and it's always going to be that way.
And do you think that we hear a lot from Americans, including some who've come to CPAC GB, and they see the bad state of Britain, and they see the stagnant economy, they see the problems we have with Islamism, they see the problems we have with everything from our industrial base to our public services. Are America going to ride to the rescue or not of the mother country?
Yes, with the right leadership here, it's fixable because we just did it ourselves. So I don't make this argument from the sense that we're perfect in America. 2 years ago, we had net zero nonsense, even though there was no public support for it. We had open borders, a fresh 10 or 15 million illegal migrants. We had hostility to the private sector, 9% inflation, and then obvious hostility to the energy sector. Does that sound familiar? It sounds like the United Kingdom, but that was the United States only 2 years ago. And so there is hope, and I think if with the right leadership, take a few pages out of the American playbook, drill baby drill, lower taxes, deregulate, and shut down the boats, shut down the border. It's so simple.
But Niall, you know in Britain, and you worked for Mrs. Thatcher, you know what Tony Blair did in terms of rigging the British state against the historic ideas that made Britain great. So getting rid of proper accountability in the judiciary, getting rid of accountability in the civil service and the areas like the Bank of England. Do you see the appetite to actually reverse that Blair revolution and have a counter-revolution? You know, is Britain ready for a Trump-style moment?
Yes, I think it is. And as you point out, of course, socialists always try to dismantle democratic accountability. It's what they do. Also, I should mention here that because you talked about the British Empire. The British Empire was one of the greatest forces for good in history. Can you imagine the world today without the British Empire? The world is a far better place thanks to what Britain achieved with the empire, and we should be 100% proud of it every day. And the United States, of course, is the creation of the British Empire, and thank God for the United States, actually. And yes, America does have a vital role to play, actually, in helping to save Western civilization here in Europe. At the end of the day, of course, the British people have got to stand up for themselves, and they've got to fight. But
they've got to wake up.
Yeah, absolutely. But the United States has this vital role of standing together with the British people and standing with all of those in Europe who actually want to throw off the shackles of tyranny, and especially across the European Union. And we now have a presidency in the United States that actually is very pro-Brexit, believes in the defense of sovereignty and self-determination, and is standing up to the tyrants of Brussels. And I look forward to the day when the European Union comes to an end and collapses, because the EU is a force of tyranny.
Well, once we fix Britain, we're going to move over the channel.
Yes.
Bridget, how ready are the Australian people to overthrow the woke orthodoxy that's infected the Albanese government?
Well, as I said earlier, the referendum actually, I think, woke Australians up. They thought they were the only person in their street that thought like them. And they'd have their arguments with their kids at Christmas about these issues. Turns out all of their neighbours agreed with them. So I think that's given Australians a lot of confidence. When you look at the polling, the Albanese government's majority is a mile wide, but an inch deep. And so I think Australians at a very visceral level are angry, but they need an opposition that they can believe in and have confidence in that will remove this. I think one of the great examples that America has given us is that it is reversible, that decline isn't inevitable. And that is why it is so important for us as leaders, but also for all of us to keep the movement going outside of this room so that we can change our parliaments and therefore save our democracies. So I think it is very ready for the right message because they've just had enough. And I think the economic piece exacerbates that issue because our living standards are going backwards and we've always been the lucky country. No more.
I mean, I hear what people say about the United States of America, but I'm not convinced the battle has been won there. If you look at Hollywood, if you look at elements of the tech industry, if you look at what's happening in American cities, where we are seeing, communists get elected, Islamo-communists like Mandami, we're seeing the same in places like Seattle. In Los Angeles, I mean, the election looked like a banana republic. I tried to relabel California the raisin republic, but it's, there seems to be a real threat to democracy, to the rule of law. You're seeing increased political violence. All is not well in America either. Do you think there's too much complacency on the American right, Greg?
I think we had maybe some overconfidence after the election. We did a victory lap. The administration just hit the ground running. If you remember January, February of 25, it was fantastic. And I think, maybe we had too much confidence. We have to remember that President Trump won with 50% of the popular vote. Now, in American electoral politics, that's a good thing. I mean, Ronald Reagan only won 56. So, and that's never going to happen again. But yeah, we have to keep fighting. There's no doubt. The institutions are completely infiltrated by the woke, crazy left. So you have the universities, the legacy media, most government, the blob still exists. We're down 375,000 federal jobs. That's a good start, but we've got a long way to go. So yeah, it's not perfect. You mentioned referendums. Just when I think that California has completely lost their mind, because the elections are in fact rigged, they send mail-in ballots to everybody. You don't even have to request it. So they just go to care homes and they find a stack in the lobby of the care home, and then, oh, how many points is he down by? And then you can send in the ballots as long as they're stamped that day. So they just get the exit polling. We did this in Illinois in 1982. It's great. So the Democrats would wait until all of the red counties, all the Republican counties would send in their numbers, and then they knew how many ballots to stuff. So finally, we got smart. In DuPage County, a collar county, very Republican, when they called and said, we need your numbers, they said, we're not falling for that again. We're waiting till midnight. So we'll put our numbers in when you put your numbers in. So they had to guess how many ballots to stuff, based maybe on exit polling. So they stuffed 7,000 ballots, but they needed 9. So Jim Thompson won the governor's race by 2,000 votes, and then 12 guys went to jail because they all started ratting on each other because they were so mad that they got it wrong. So it's not perfect.
No, it's not perfect. Thank you. We've got 5 minutes left, and I'd like to ask our other 3 panelists, really about the state of politics and how they think. So in Britain, we're likely to have an election in 2029. What do you think the winning party or coalition is that's going to be capable of carrying out the agenda we've been talking about?
Yeah, and I think we should start focusing on, I'm not going to call it the finish line, because there is no discharge in this battle, ever. This is not a sprint and it's over. This is an eternal marathon, and we've constantly got to be in our guard. And that's why Greg is absolutely right. And you know, we started with a bit of confidence here in the States, and it was going, the race never finishes. We've got to keep at it. So let's get the policies right. Let's get the people behind us. Let's galvanize support. Every single one of you can reach someone in your own street, your own family, your own neighborhood, your own employment. You can start having the conversations. Bridget, you've used the word confidence. Let's find that in ourselves. Shoulders back, people, chest out. We're right to be proud about what we're fighting for here, because we are on the winning side.
So who are you backing to be Prime Minister in 2029 in?
Well, looking at it from where I'm sitting, I think Nigel Farage will be the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. I think the public are so sick of what has happened, they actually don't care what's thrown at them, true or false. They're saying we're going to give something radical a chance. This is a revolution, guys. It's a typical British revolution. We'll have afternoon tea in the middle of it. But I think, and I do believe, that if there is not a Conservative government, a government of the right the next time, Liz, your spectre of a time to save the West, that really does become what's ahead of us. So folks, get out there. Let's win.
So Bridget, I believe the next Australian election is also in 2029. Who is going to be the winning Prime Minister in your view?
Well, I'll be doing everything I can to make sure the winning Prime Minister will be from the centre-right. We've got a lot bigger.
Who is that? Just tell the audience, because
they might
not be familiar with Australian politics.
So if you don't understand Australian politics, which is fair enough, on the centre-right, we have the Liberal Party, which is the predominant centre-right party. You have my political party, called the National Party, which is the Conservative Party. We have the Deputy Prime Ministership when we have that great privilege. And obviously, Pauline Hanson is leader of One Nation, who are riding high very much in the polls at the moment. So I would like to see centre-right, but a lot needs to go right for the centre-right to actually get there. The Labor Party machine is highly organised. We need, in my view, to reconnect with actual people, where they are. Politics, it should be about people. Maybe it hasn't always been about people in the recent past. And get serious about the policies we're going to repeal, like net zero and the like. And for me, I think the beauty of the Anglosphere, if this is our last comment, Liz, is about, Five Eyes partnership, actually defending the West. We are a subset of the West. Europe can go do Europe, but I think our great nations, out of Britain, have a responsibility to the globe in our Five Eyes partnership that we shouldn't forget.
Thank you. And I'm just going to ask a quick comment from both Niall and Greg about the United States of America and who we can expect to be the presidential nominee for 2028. Niall.
Yeah, so I'm going to, I'm not going to address that question directly because it's
disgraceful.
Because I work with, because I work with multiple different potential.
He wants the job. But whichever president it is, he wants the job.
Let me say though about Britain here, because if the right does not win in the United Kingdom in the next general election, it will be an absolute catastrophe. Britain cannot survive another 5 years of socialism. I worked for Margaret Thatcher for many years, and I know what a winner looks like. I do think that Nigel Farage will be Prime Minister one day. He's somebody who has taken on the entire establishment. He's a deeply patriotic figure, someone who loves his country. And Britain is on the ropes right now. If we lose Britain, we lose Western civilization. It's as simple as that, actually. And so the stakes are incredibly high. And socialism, which is a monstrous evil, has to be defeated. And I emphasize the British dimension because what happens here is so incredibly important. And we cannot afford to lose the United Kingdom. And so this is a fight for freedom, it's for liberty, and it's for the future as well of the free world and the West. And so it's such a vital battle here in the UK.
Thank you. Now, just very quickly, Greg, who will be the presidential candidate in 28?
I can't tell you who. I could tell you it'll be one of the three. It'll be J.D. Vance, it will be Marco Rubio, or it will be Governor Ron DeSantis. It's one of those three. The only thing I can argue conclusively is that the country club Republican Party is over. Like, this was not just about President Trump. This is the movement to MAGA is permanent. So I don't think you'll see the comeback of Nikki Haley and John McCain types or Mitt Romney types. That ship has sailed.
Well, we're out of time now. Thank you so much to all of our panelists. I thought that was a great discussion. And let's make the Anglosphere great again.
Thank you, Liz, and well done. Well done.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage our final guest speaker, the critic, author, historian, and president of the Palm Beach Freedom Institute, Paul Duquesnoy.
Last one to go. Oh no, this is the best slot to have. Are you kidding me? This is when I get to talk after having listened to everything that's been going on for the past 3 days at this wonderful conference. Congratulations to Matt and Mercedes and Liz for putting this on. Happy to be at CPAC UK and it's GB in its first incarnation. Glad to see all of you here today and just thrilled to be here. I have come to talk about the global conservative movement, which we think about immensely in my modest hometown, Palm Beach, Florida. Small village of 8,000 people with 68 resident billionaires, and I don't even need to say who my neighbor 5 minutes down the street is. But yes, we are here to listen, to learn, and to help with what is becoming a global movement. No, you in the UK are not alone. The Anglosphere is in trouble, but we are moving far beyond the English-speaking places and into the immense and majestic wave of national conservative politics that is sweeping over the entire world. Thank you, thank you. 15 years ago, we had only one national conservative government, Viktor Orban's government in Hungary, sadly just voted out of office in April. Now, by my count, we have 27 countries, including my own, with national conservative governments and fantastic elections to come in the next few years, including in this country, in 2029, or maybe sooner. I hear the same thing when I talk to 20-year-old university students in the United States or 92-year-old old ladies in France. These are the countries of my birth and the country of my heritage. They are sick and tired of what has been happening in the West. They're mad as hell and they're not going to take it anymore. They have completely fed up, and they are happy to tell you enough is enough. It is the same message across languages, across cultures, across international boundaries. And my organization, the Palm Beach Freedom Institute, never imagined when we were founded 5 years ago that I would be standing main stage at CPAC giving this address, or that we would be meeting with our members in Zurich about projects in Switzerland, which I was doing last weekend, or that we would be meeting with French politicians to talk about ways to advance ideas and institutions and infrastructure in their country, which I'll be doing next week. My task has become a labor of love. It is a daily struggle, of course. Nothing is perfect. Our enemies, and I use that word deliberately, they are not our opponents, they are our enemies. They're quite literally happy to see us be killed, as we know from Charlie Kirk's sad case and the wonderful award we gave to him last night. We are determined to continue fighting, and that determination is what will carry us forward in the coming years. We do face obstacles. Even our Trump revolution in America has not been a complete process. There have been backslides and disappointments, but every day we get up, we realize that we are winning more and more and more, that we are becoming more and more powerful every day. At our institution in Palm Beach, we are very well situated. We're at a cultural crossroads between Europe, the United States, Latin America, and increasingly, we hear even from Asia and the Pacific world. We have a local population that is entirely with us. If you walk around in a MAGA hat, nobody is going to shame you or scold you or throw a milkshake at you. They'll ask to shake your hand. We went 68% for Trump in the last election. The other 32% are embarrassed, and we hope moving. So this is the situation we face. Being a national conservative in Palm Beach is normal. It's celebrated. It's a happy thing to be, and it's just a delightful way to live. We hope to export it off of our island community, not only to the United States, which was our original intent, but to the entire world. We have that capability. Prime Minister Truss was with us in February for a wonderful event for our members there, and we will be having other world leaders come through all the time, particularly the new Latin American ones. If you look at the map of Latin America lately, you still have Brazil under Lula and his suspicious re-election, but we think Flavio Bolsonaro has a very good chance in October. So I have actual members in South America now talking to Espriella and these other people about ways forward and how Palm Beach could play a positive role in their future. They look to us for leadership, and we offer that here in the UK and throughout the world. We will be present in Europe. I'm staying the entire summer. I haven't had much else to do. It's a bit hot in Florida right now, but not as hot as it was in England a couple of weeks ago. But we are here to help build that infrastructure, to offer the training, to use our immense resources to help your organizations, your media, and your personnel to advance our message, to take the very best of our past and move it forward to a radiant future. People are afraid. I know there is some pessimism here. Do we lose England in the next year? I don't think so. I think you're stronger than that. I see your poll numbers. I see what excites your people. People say to me often, but being in Palm Beach, doesn't that put you in a kind of bubble? Well, yes, it does. But where would you rather see the sea from? The raging storm in the ocean? The bubble in the submarine? Or when you're swimming against the current, fighting every day just to survive? No, it's when you're back and looking out at it that you see most clearly. And we see the trends, we deal with the personnel, we have the ready accessibility, and we send out our shock troops when we need them to do the things that need to be done. As I said before, this will not be an easy path. Our enemies are strong. They are still embedded in our institutions, even in Trump's America, even in the state of Florida. It's a shame Governor DeSantis couldn't be here today. I'm very sorry that he had some weather trouble, but he really was the model, not just for what we're doing, but for what everybody else is doing. the institutions of state can be brought under control. You just have to lose this ridiculous delusion that you need to be liked. You don't. Who cares? It's a weakness in our movement. If you go to the fading northern capitals of America, New York City and Washington, where I keep my appearances infrequent and brief. For one thing, I don't want to become the victim of some hideous crime, you know? But infrequent and brief. People on our movement simply want to have comfortable blue state social lives that nobody interferes with, where their neighbors like them, and as a result, it affects their ideas, their ideology, their process, even their way of thinking. You must reject that, decisively and forever. Will you lose friends? Of course. But if you do, were they really your friends in the first place? No. They all scream about being tolerant and inclusive. Are they tolerant of you? Of course not. Do they want to include you? No, they don't. Is it our democracy? No, it's their democracy, and there's no place for you in it if you express what you really believe. You could keep your heads down and sort of go along to get along, but what the hell would be the point of that? You lose your country, you lose your identity, you lose your sense of self. In Palm Beach, we reject this attitude on a daily basis. You should hear the conversations that go on just in our local milieu. Just go out to a restaurant, walk down the street, listen to what people are saying, and you will hear the voices not just of what one small community in America thinks, but the voices of what millions and millions of people around the world think. What people everywhere are now coming together in mass movements with gigantic leads in the polls. Just stay organized, stay on point, stay focused, and you will succeed in this country and in all of the other countries that face this contest and these major challenges. You are at the forefront of a global movement. This, I think, will be the first of many CPAC GBs, and I'm already hearing that there may be a CPAC Italy in the offing. I think after the disaster in Hungary, we will have to start thinking about other countries to base operations in. We have a broad choice. There are many such places open for infrastructure and media development, places where we can encourage the local conservatives to move forward. Britain is a great one. You already have some of that. People like Toby Young and the Free Speech Union, who spoke the other day, and some of your other organizations are fantastic and on point. In the continent, you don't have as much, but we are hoping to correct that soon. We have avid partners who are looking very much in favor of working toward this future for their own countries. You're hearing rhetoric across cultures and languages that sound tremendously like what we have built in the United States. You hear Trump-like slogans being spoken in perfectly fluent French and English and Polish and Hungarian and Italian, in Bulgarian and Slovenian. All of these different languages and peoples are embracing it, and we are here to offer our guidance and our help. And as we conclude CPAC for this session, and again, I'm thrilled to be the last person speaking main stage because we've got so much happening here. There's so much synergy in this room over the past few days that I think looking to the future, we will be having many, many more gatherings like this with many, many more like-minded people. Please bring your friends, bring your neighbors, try to convince them, talk to them rationally if they're capable of rational thought. A lot of our enemies aren't. They're all basing what they do on emotion, and that ultimately, in my opinion, is their greatest weakness. When they crash out, as the kids now say, they embarrass themselves. You realize that they don't have the courage of their convictions because, in fact, they have no convictions. They have feelings. Well, as we say in America, fuck your feelings. It isn't about that, and ultimately the future will not be about them. It will be about you and what each and every one of you is capable of doing. You are part of a vast team, a vast network, and a great big conservative family that is becoming global. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, to bring the world's first CPAC Great Britain to a close, please welcome to the stage the Right Honourable Liz Truss and CPAC Chairman Matt Schlapp.
What do you think, Liz?
I think it's been brilliant to bring CPAC GB to fruition.
Yeah.
I've been to CPACs around the world, and I always wanted to have one here because I think it's so needed. Our country has been taken over by the progressive blob, and we're only going to be able to fight back by building a movement. And that's what we are trying to do. And I've seen how you've done it in America, Matt, and I loved it so much that I wanted to bring it here.
She's right. I think we can really win this battle. I think you can win it here. I think we can build on our victories in America. I think we can continue to do this around the globe. You know, they lie to you constantly, right? The big media companies, social media platforms, they tell you that your ideas are trite, old-fashioned, quaint, what a novel idea, but passé. And then they try to make you feel bad for who you are and what you believe. And in America, we used to say there was a silent majority, not vociferous, but there was a core group of people that understood these traditional values were good. And I hope the number one thing that you leave CPAC Great Britain understanding is, number one, you're not alone. Number one, you don't have to. Number two, you don't have to whisper, right? Number three, you can feel hope. I asked Tony Abbott, the former Prime Minister of Australia, once. I asked him when we had first gone to Australia, and by the way, the government there has done some terrible things. I asked him, I said, "Are you optimistic?" He said, "No." I was discouraged. He's not optimistic? This great conservative former Prime Minister? He said, "I'm something much better than that. I'm hopeful," which is a Christian virtue. You might be scared and worried and all the rest, which we all are, but you know there's a plan, right? And you know that it doesn't rest all on your shoulders, but you have a big role to play. All of us have a big role to play, and I would just like to say to Liz that I think she's an unusual person in many ways because she's had high office, and she's still willing to roll up her sleeves and get her hands a little dirty and do the hard work of building up what you call a movement, which isn't about one person. It's not about one party. It's not about one idea. It's about a whole philosophy of people finding joy and prosperity. So thank you for everything you've done.
Well, thank you. And thank you to Matt and the CPAC US team for all your help in making this happen. It's been incredibly important, and we're incredibly grateful. And to Mercedes and your family and your staff and your team, it's been brilliant. And what I want to say to people here today is this is the start of something. We need your help to promote CPAC, to bring your friends and family along, to bring your organizations along, to bring your businesses along, because we are not going to win this fight alone. And the reason that I wanted to bring CPAC to GB is, having been in office, having got to the position of Prime Minister, I understood that the forces we are fighting are very powerful. They're very well funded. You know, the left have jobs that they can go into and out of and go back into government. They control the bureaucracy, the universities. We need a movement that is going to take them on. It's not enough just to get the right person in number 10 Downing Street. It needs to be bigger than that, and that's what this conference is about. You know, we brought together the people who believe in free speech, the people who are concerned about currency debasement, the people who are concerned about mass migration, the people who have been victims of the grooming gangs, people from across the world who share our values, who believe in liberty, who believe in sovereignty, who believe in their nations. And that is what we need to build here in Britain. We know the people of Britain support this, but we know that many of them feel powerless, and we can help people feel powerful so they can take on the failing establishment that has managed decline in this country for many, many years. Please go out, spread the message, talk about CPAC, encourage people to get involved in our movement, encourage people to support our movement. I want to thank everybody who's helped us. I've talked about CPAC US. We've also had a lot of help from our friends at CPAC
By the way,
Australia.
you know, everyone's invited to CPAC USA in April. If you want to come, you're more than welcome.
That is, it's an experience that you will never experience anywhere else.
It's like a wholesome Disney World, okay?
The people of CPAC Australia have been brilliant. My family have been incredibly supportive. My husband Hugh is here, but my 2 daughters as well. Also my team, the organising committee of CPAC Great Britain, the Media Values Foundation, and all of the sponsors and donors who've helped us put on this event. It was the first year we've done it. I recognise they were making a punt this year. That early support has been so vital to getting this movement going. And I know that we are going to go from strength to strength. We're going to bring more people on board, and we have an exciting future. So thanks everybody for coming to CPAC GB, and I look forward to seeing you back again in 2027. Thank you. There will be a film shown, a Tim Ballard film will be shown straight after this session.
He's a great guy. It's a very important topic. We spend a lot of time partnering on human trafficking, and so I encourage you to stay and watch it if you can.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.